So yeah, for those watching the VOD, we'll just be waiting a few minutes for people to come in. Anyone want to talk maybe a little bit about any of the things we saw during the last one?
I didn't actually watch the last one.
Well, how about then you, fill Calibur in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the last set review, we looked at white and blue comments. We talked fairly extensively about the archetypes that paired with white and blue, and we looked fairly extensively at the mechanics that appeared both white and blue at common.
I see.
Main one of those being civilized was a big part of our focus.
Especially because civilized did appear heavily in both white and blue, right?
Yes, both the mechanic itself and the support for it.
It doesn't appear that the set details page is updated.
No, the Plane Sculptors page is not very updated. I mean, he's been like very sick for the last few days or so. So even after the review, where during the last review, I pointed out, hey, the Plane Sculptors page is not very up to date. I imagine he hasn't had much opportunity / willingness to update that. Cool. Oh, thank you for hosting, Cleo. Maybe we'll ask Drake to do the same, right?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone will show up, but better safe than sorry, right?
All right, so let's get this started here. So now today we're going to be doing the like we said before, the second part of the Babylos custom set design review for its commons. So we're going to start with go all the way through black commons, go all the way through red commons. I am your main host, Zoo. You know me well, and with us we have Cleo, who was with us during the last Babylos draft. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Cleo, known on some of the discords as Sir Living. We were just going through and offering. I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to say, Zoo.
No, that's about it.
That's good. Hi,
nice about yourself.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
And
hello.
Quickly into actually talking about cards now. What we're going to be doing, so if you guys have it set up the same as I do, just to reiterate, we'll be going through black commons, sorted by CMC, please. So the first card you should see on your, yes, the first card you should see is Typhoid Rats. All right, tell me when you got that. Cool.
Sure thing.
And what I'll normally do is once I've done reading the card, if I have any actual thoughts on it, I'll say it, or maybe I'll prompt you guys for questions. Print. It's black for a 1/1 creature rat. It has Death Touch. So not only is this black for a 1/1 with Death Touch something we see a lot both in real Magic and custom Magic, this is one of the classic OG rats.
Classic, simple, clean. Everyone loves it, or at least approves it.
Talk about here is the flavor. And I think from the perspective of kind of tying into the trope of cities equal disease, like people move from farmland into cities and they start getting more disease, they start getting more city-born pests and stuff. This is just a great example of fulfilling on that trope. Maybe get some pedantic nuance here with like typhoid. Maybe people, like for example, I would associate that more with the 18th or 19th century. You know, maybe I would associate or something with this more ancient time period, but the idea works.
Are we going to talk about the flavor text? Sure thing. Sure. I will note that this tells me, with having paid very little attention to the set recently, that there are 4 main groups. Yes. Which is, somewhat important.
Oh, I'm not heard?
Hmm?
Apparently. Okay. Can anyone else weigh in? Wait, I heard myself.
Well, to weigh in on typhoid rats as an inclusion, it does. Typhoid rats is fairly efficient in limited. We have some sets where the cheap black death touch creature costs more mana, whether it's 2 or 3. And although they come with a larger body, it does deter ground-based aggro being so cheap to be able to interact with that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Or so sorry, I was just messing with a technical problem. Yeah. There's ways you can mess around with where the death touch is at common, but I don't think you can necessarily go wrong with a 1/1 for 1.
No, not at all. And I remember
yeah.
in the games that we played of it, I had the equipment that gave the typhoid rats first strike, and so I had one of those and like 3 typhoid rats.
Yeah, it was kind of miserable.
Which, well, it just made it so you had to kill all my typhoid rats. And the fact that I got
Yes.
that at 1 mana is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's more just a thing. Just noticing, like, okay, well, this is designed so I get access to this on the cheap. It really does help control decks, which I believe Black is trying to push, right?
Yes.
Like, because we have the civilized.
That we're going to be seeing civilized in, but we're also going to start seeing a little bit more of Endurer, and even Endurer is kind of grindy, so I think we're going to mostly see a very grindy Black.
And yeah, and from what I saw of this set, I did like that Death Toucher being a 1 mana 1/1 and not a 2 mana 2/1 or 3 mana 1/3 or whatever else your other options are.
Yeah.
I thought the 1 mana 1/1 was a good spot for it. I like the inclusion of this, and I like the flavoring of it.
Cool. All right, let us move on.
Now, a quick question. Do discoveries, are they at common?
No.
Okay.
There's no discoveries in common. So, actually, and to talk about that, I talked about this a little bit at the end of the last one, but what we're going to be doing is, because discoveries are still important as a mechanic of the set, that are going to be affecting draft, and especially affecting a few of our evaluations of other cards, that especially ones that like deal with enchantments. After colorless commons in the 3rd stream, my plan is to look at all of the discoveries. So just just because that's something to make that'll probably round out the 2 hours for the 3rd stream. All right, let us move on. Our next card is the Bone Mesa Outcast. It is 1 and a black for a 2/1 creature orc nomad, and it has Endurer for 3 and a black. So if I remember correctly, this is the first time we're seeing this mechanic. And whenever this creature attacks, if it hasn't endured, you may pay its endure cost. So in this case, you can pay 3 and a black, and if you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on it and it endures. So it's kind of like Renown, but you don't have to hit them, but you do have to pay for it. And on this particular card, it says when it endures, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a little bit extra spice on the normal endure.
Well, you're never going to turn down a piker per se, and the endure ability can come into play late game and do pretty well since it gets back a creature.
Absolutely. So maybe let's take this opportunity to talk about kind of Endure as a mechanic on its own. Obviously, this is not the most vanilla usage of it, but after we talk about the mechanic, we'll talk about maybe a little bit more about this usage of it. As a mechanic, it fits the grindy nature that we've seen so far, but kind of on a more aggressive or tempo-y bend. This isn't like a mechanic that's making you all like blitz out aggro, but it is saying, hey, if you are the beat down, and then after that you start, when you're attacking in, the creatures get bigger and bigger and bigger, and starts making it so that your early threats become slightly more relevant in the late game.
Right, it's a curve filler and a mana sink, and just makes sure that your that your threats stay relevant.
Yes. Which is in a set that is also taking creatures, making them better with, for example, civilized or anything else.
With equipments and auras.
Yes. One thing that I do think is a little awkward with this mechanic is the verbiage. So in comparison to something like Renown, where it's there's a more clear idea that it is a on or off state in like the flavor. Like I'm either not famous or I'm famous, right? That's like that's an action you take continuously.
Yeah, like that's a constant state.
Like I am enduring, right? You could endure for years and then stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is more maybe it's trying to go for the idea of there's the one struggle I have endured that struggle. I'm changed for the rest of my life. Maybe that's kind of what it's going for.
Do you think that comes across well?
It didn't to me at first. What do you have any thoughts on this, Cleo?
Now that we talk about it, I do agree that the flavor does feel a little bit off. I will say that in playing it and looking at the setup until now, it has not bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it doesn't come across weirdly at first glance. It comes across weirdly when you delve into it a little bit.
Yes.
But then like you can come up with something. Right.
Like that's a little bit part of it. So maybe certain like players who are less familiar with Magic would find it more strange. Not sure.
I do want to bring up with this card. We do here have it's clearly not as problematic as like a Gravedigger because he has to attack to trigger it, but this guy does loop at common.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It
gives your opponent a lot more control over it, as opposed to block-based loops. I mean, it is 6 mana to do the whole loop. Though.
Right. 6 mana, 2 turns, and attacking.
So that's probably fine, but good to point out.
Yes, definitely a red flag, even if not for lines.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're red flagging off of drawing a card, right?
And being long. Right.
Right.
This is a red flag for many, many ways.
Yes. But that's not to say it can't be at common per se.
Oh, certainly not.
Yeah, I think it is fine at common, and I mean it's kind of loud for me in that this is a card that if there was no removal in my pack and no like pure bombs, I'm likely to take it. It's got to be.
Well, it's flexible
Mm-hmm.
in one of the top 3
valuable.
black commons, right? Like right, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if we look at what black is doing as a color, it does support black-green mid-range very well. It does support black. Does it support black-blue civilized? Well, getting creatures back is good because your creatures can die, but it forces you to attack. But it also gives you kind of like an early game creature that gives you late game value. So I think it does support what black is doing. I like the card.
That otherwise might be a little bit unappealing as a mechanic because it doesn't have like the cool, as much as the cool story moment of Renown, for example. It's like, I hit them. That's cool.
Would you say?
It's saying, I gotta pay mana for this.
Right.
Stop that. I'm a cool card.
Just make the mechanics seem actually worth it at common.
Cool. Do we have any other thoughts on this card? It's an orc. Orcs are cool. I like orcs.
No, I'm good to move on.
I think orcs fit. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let us move on. Our next card is Debilitating Injury. It's 1 and a black for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2. So like a fairly simple. Is this a reprint?
Yeah, I was about to ask the same thing.
Because it feels like a reprint. It's like obviously it's very similar to cards that we know like Deadweight. I'll look it up. And you guys can talk about it.
It's a reprint from Cons.
Yeah.
Okay, it is.
We all came out at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah, it just seems classic, useful on larger creatures to just weaken them, and also smaller ones to just kill them outright.
or civilized.
Mm.
You say, hey, that's now a 1/1, a completely irrelevant, useless 1/1, and now I have an enchantment sticking around. How cool is that?
That's pretty nice.
You know. Like if we had something that was like neg 3 or something like that.
The flavor text actually specifically talks about that use. It says
Yes.
light enough that they don't die.
Yes.
That's pretty neat.
Yes. So and we're talking about how cool that is that you can do that, but Simon points out in the comments that because it can still block, it does a weird thing where as the player who has now used this to enable civilized,
Right.
I don't want to attack in because I don't want them to block with the creature. Enchanted block, is that maybe unreprintify this and put that text on there? Might be pretty cool.
Interesting. Making it what would the stat debuff be in that case?
Oh, I don't know. You'd change the numbers around.
Sure, definitely.
You know,
I would say I don't know if the art is entirely suitable to the name.
It is not. Well, also because there's like a small, that's like a giant looking at someone. I can't tell what even is that on their.
It's kind of confusing in general,
are they
but also
like
not
a
really.
Ball of evil.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird.
Cleo?
Yeah, no, I'm here. You guys kind of covered most of it. I really think that the ability for this to enable civilized, I don't think, with how I've seen the games play out, this being a civilized enabler, I think is going to happen like 1 out of 10 times. It's not enough to really be, for me to think about that as a primary use of the card.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. I don't mean to take away from it as a removal spell in a set where paying 2 mana to kill a 2 toughness creature is generally a mana advantage. The card is quite good in probably a first, second, third pick in black in this set. Like even if it was just a sorcery that did that, And I also think that if you wanted to add the not block clause to it, you could probably just get away with it on these stats. Like it's not that much of a push.
Okay. Cool. And Ruben in the comments points out that could even turn into a reprint of Cast into Darkness, which is 1 in a black, neg 2, neg-0, and can't block. So pretty much only does the can't block thing.
And hey, the art would be more appropriate for that.
Yes, it would. All right. Let's move on to the next card. We have Into the Lion's Den. It is 1 in a black for an enchantment, notably. Like we keep talking about enchantments. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand, and you choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card until Into the Lion's Den leaves the battlefield. So this is our hand hate, or like targeted discard common slot that we sometimes see in this time in the form of an enchantment. So notably, there's only ever in like modern Magic design, if I remember correctly, only been 1 Oblivion Ring at common. And we talked a little bit about that in the last review when we looked at the white O-Ring. So this is kind of even stretching into even more territory where not only is targeted discard turned into an O-Ring slightly weird, that's something that we've seen at like uncommon and as such, like Brain Maggot and
Tide Hollow
Sculler. What was the Kite Sail Freebooter? We've seen a lot in that kind of form. So that's already a little weird for black. And then O-Rings are already a little weird for common. So do we think the enabling the mechanic is enough to get over that?
I think there's another issue too, in that targeted discard at common generally doesn't do
doesn't
full
take everything.
Thoughtseize.
Yes.
And generally speaking, doing that at 2 mana with, I guess this does have the drawback of the fact that it's removable, but that's a relatively minor one considering that it's also enabling civilized. So just doing that at 2 mana is questionable still.
Well, we can certainly get a 3 mana exile coercion at common. Like I certainly think that's okay at 3 mana. Like if we just looked at it, if it was a sorcery spell that costs 3 and exile to remove it, I think we actually had that recently in Innistrad. Or not recently, that was a long time ago. Let me double check.
Sorry, we got what in Innistrad?
Coercion removal
Mm.
that exiled.
Mm. Sure.
I think having the additional text and additional relevance on this is pretty significant to making it more complex for common, and in a bad way. And I do like that it enables civilized, but I think it would still be a fine civilized enabler at uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and well,
especially if it's like 2 mana at uncommon, then it's like still pretty good.
Yeah, it's still totally playable in like standard.
Yeah, I think that I agree that I don't like this at common, largely just because of the O-ring side of it. To clarify my comment earlier, Night Terrors was a 3 mana common sorcery that exiled from hand. It was a look at their hand and exile any non-land card. And it was important in the set. I do remember boarding it in because you sometimes needed the exile side of it because it was Innistrad. I mean that was a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just that effect at common, I don't think is undoable. But it being
all the other
O-ring on top of that,
yeah,
exactly, and pushing the card more, and maybe seeing if there's a way to make it cost 1 mana, make it more of a duress, seems even more interesting to me.
That is
as a duress
constructed as a duress. I mean that still has like weird constructed implications.
Yeah.
But
I think that's weird at common still.
Think about.
No, I agree. I think that's weird at common. I meant to add uncommon.
He meant if you move it up in rarity, you can also explore 1 mana options, which is interesting, to say the least.
I think it would be more interesting as a despise, but that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah. No, I think I agree.
As well. So.
I see.
So cool. Oh, actually, well, a little bit about the flavor is obviously a reference to the Old Testament biblical story of the prophet. Who was it? Like David or something?
Samson?
Well, I don't know. Someone. Being thrown into the lion's den and with God's help. God's help, in this case, obviously being enchantment removal. So we'll see about that. The flavor here is pretty cool, I guess. Right now it's a little bit abstract, you know. It's also weird because we in Magic associate lions with white, and this being black, and also being an O-ring. Like that all kind of makes it feel a little white. But yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on the flavor?
None further.
Good. There's good comments on your side.
All right, let's move on. We have the Outcast's Precision. It is 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. So this is a pretty normal numerical swap on a lot of other things we saw. Like we saw in, I don't remember which Tarkir said it was, but we saw Butcher's Glee, which was effectively indestructible, +3/+0 and 3 mana, which that was a little too good. So but this is 2 mana +1/+0. Seems like a fine downgrade, side grade on something like that. Another notable thing about this is that the white combat trick was also a 2 mana lifelink giving trick. Maybe a little too similar there, because I know we were talking about we were kind of extolling the praises of that design as something that looked very normal on the surface, but that we knew, hey, was actually kind of supporting some of what white was doing in terms of the little bit more grindiness, and especially the kind of like the white green like large dudes deck.
So are you thinking that this wants to favor more power instead of instead of lifelink?
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of like to see this pump spell push a little more towards being a freebie table card for the black-red aggro deck.
Mm-hmm. That kind of slot, something that's better at pushing a tempo advantage, which I mean this still is, but only in a deck that's kind of caring a little bit more about the lifelink, about the life gain from it.
Right.
Not your most aggressive decks, yeah. So probably it would be best to swap over to that, yeah. Cool. The art doesn't really fit the name.
No,
This is just kind of a dude standing there,
yes.
and it's not
A
really a combat
scary
trick.
dude.
But combat tricks are hard, you know. All right. Do you have any other comments on this one?
Well, I'm thinking about what card I would want to see, right? Or like maybe something like Coat with Venom, plus 1 black for +1/+2 and Death Touch.
Mm-hmm.
I think the point here is indestructible,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it could be Death Touch and indestructible.
Absolutely. Well, that's a scary one. So like an updated Necrobite, like 3 mana, Death Touch, and indestructible.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with no like power boost.
Oof.
So that's interesting. I don't know if we've seen that. Have we? A 3 mana Death Touch and indestructible?
Can't say we have, but they haven't printed anything like that since they got rid of Regenerate that I know of off the top of my head. But adding power is sort of equivalent to that anyway. It's basically being used as situational removal that saves your creature.
Yeah.
And this would just be
it does make
a side grade to that.
The difference, the gulf, more important, right? If you're saying, hey, I have a 1/1 token, it now has Death Touch and indestructible. Your 6/6 dies. That's something that could totally happen.
I wonder, and this is just like we're just getting weird and creative here, right? What if the card like cared about Endure in some way? Like,
sure. I mean, that would be extremely flavorful.
Could it trigger Endure? Could you have it be a black instant that puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature and makes it endure if he has it? Okay.
Well, honestly, I don't think I'm even a fan of that kind of thing in general, but certainly in the slot. I mean, it could be gains indestructible if the creature has endured, gets +3/+0 or something like that.
Ooh, yeah.
Or, I like
your
that.
opponent loses some life and you gain some life.
Certainly. Anything could tie into that. Could make it a little sexier as well. Is a big thing there. All right. Do we have any further comments?
No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Cool. Let us move on. We have Ruthless Advancement. It is 1 and a black for an instant as an additional cost to cast this spell. We gotta make that templating change. Sacrifice a non-land permanent. Draw 2 cards. So very similar to the kinds of things we see Altar's Reap. Was it
Soren's something?
There was one that was like artifact or creature in Ixalan. You know, we've seen varieties on this, but this is even more flexible than that. This is anything: artifact, enchantment, planeswalker. You know, structure in eventual Doharim Babylos standard. I guess that's just an artifact, so never mind. I don't know why I made that joke. Let's move on. What do we think about the flexibility here, given that it does make people ask the question, hey, you can sacrifice artifacts and gems to that. That's something that's happening in black with Civilized.
Right. I would agree. If that is something you want, then this is a good thing. But if you want people's artifacts and enchantments to be sticking around, then it's probably a bad thing, as it specifically says you should get rid of them.
Well, so one thing I want to say to that I think is really cool is that when you're trying to draft the deck, you're often going to be drafting like subpar stuff just to have like a critical mass of the artifacts and enchantments. And this is really good in a deck where you're saying, hey, once I get my second enchantment out, the first one I played is kind of crap. I'm going to sacrifice that now. I don't need it anymore. You know, it just kind of smooths out some of the things that's happening in the deck, potentially.
Now, do we think stretching it to all non-land permanent is a fine thing to do?
I think so.
I think power-wise, it's fine. I think it's not a big deal design space-wise. Like, it's a bit of a stretch, but it's fine. Cleo?
Thoughts, Cleo?
Well, I'm not convinced that the set wants this card. Would be the way that I'd put it.
Why is that?
Which archetype are we arguing wants to play this?
Any kind of deck, like I'd say maybe like blue-black or black-green. We
What kind of deck
saw
typically wants an Altars Reap?
any deck where you're kind of happy to hold up mana sometimes, or you have things to sack to it. Especially if
So
you're
just like a
maybe
mid-rangey deck?
any kind like mid-rangey, but where you're playing a little more instant speed, I imagine. Like we see a little bit, like from my previous knowledge about the set, we see a little bit more flash in green than is normal. And we also see some flash in blue, of course, just normal amounts of flash in blue. So it could be like blue-black or black-green potentially. If there's any kind of like where I'm holding this up, saying, hey, you know, I'm gonna block with a creature, sacrifice it, or you know, you're gonna try to remove one of my creatures, I'm gonna sacrifice it, or just I'm gonna draw into something I don't need, sack it.
Well, I'll definitely say that I like the flavor of the card.
The
And
flavor is great.
Oh,
and
yeah,
and
it's really
sets need some amount of like last pick cards that then get sideboarded in specific situations that are very strong, and I think that this card fits those. But I was unimpressed with it in the drafts, sealeds, and games that we have done. And it is a spot that if he wanted to have something that's more slotted for the archetypes, I think this is a slot where you could do that.
Yeah,
But as far as a card that sometimes is going to get value, it certainly does that, and the flavor is there.
sure. Cool. Let's move on. Our next card is the Trophy of Salazar. It is 1 and a black for an artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 and equip 2. So yet another one of these colored equipment with an enters the battlefield effect that we're seeing. I really enjoy this. It's really cool. It does the same kind of thing that just like returning a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. It says, okay, you're doing a little bit of grindiness, and the being an actual equipment kind of does the same thing, where it's saying, hey, you're going to be able to grind out a little bit of value, spend some money, or spend some mana to get more board presence. Especially, I
Just
love
like
the fact
Endure.
that these specifically interact so well with each other. It says you return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and then you equip the equipment to that creature when you play it later. It's a flavor slam dunk.
So what occurs to me at first was a little bit of disappointment, but I guess then more instruction that you don't play this early. And that initially I was disappointed with that, but then I'm like, that says something about how the set plays. It's not like you're not supposed to play it early. You're not supposed to want to play it early.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially that's lining up with what we were talking about with Endure, where it's like, hey, you're playing out your creatures, and late game you're spending mana to buff them up. This does almost exactly the same thing, and in fact, almost slightly too much of the same thing, as Ruben is pointing out. This feels a little too similar to the 2-drop Endure that we saw.
Right.
I think I agree with Ruben that having both this and the 2-drop Endure occupy that same space is not good.
I agree.
And if personally, if I had to pick between the two, I would pick this over the other one. My only kind of qualm with this card is if I'm trying to get civilized online early and this is my only artifact, it's like I have to wait for my creature to die before I get my civilized.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And for me, that is enough of an issue with how that I would, despite how sweet this flavor is, I would consider moving this to uncommon or rare, pumping it up and putting something else in its spot. But I think the solution is the card is interesting enough, and it is certainly a fine first pick black common. That I think keeping this one and changing the other one is also fine.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those things where it's like it's so cool that you're allowed a little bit of leeway there with the potential feel bads. You know, and especially if there is like the critical mass of artifacts in the set, that's going to happen a lot less where you're having to play it as maybe your only artifact. That is to say, if the set is well set up like that, if we do see, hey, there are artifacts that you can pick and you will have enough. You know?
Well, Ruben's suggestion in the comments is like actually seems really sweet to me.
The
Um,
having the black common equipment have ETB opponent discards a card.
yeah, you lose
Sure.
the flavoring of it, but it would play
Well,
very
but,
well
but
as
this
civilized.
flavor works as an uncommon as well. Like
Absolutely.
you can have this
And
anywhere. You can have this on a rare.
yes,
You know.
yes,
My
you can. You can.
concern would be that that's pretty aggressive. So if the message you're trying to get across is this is not aggressive, that doesn't.
Eh.
I mean, so
I mean, playing a
if I
two-drop
have an equipment
equipment.
that gives +1/+1, and when I play it makes my opponent discard a card, I play that turn like 2.
Yeah.
If that was the costume we agreed on, was fine. So I'm not going down a card, and I'm setting up civilized. So it's encouraging me really heavily to play my civilized enabler as soon as possible, and that for me is kind of like what I kind of want to see with civilized is just like more cards that are good in the civilized deck that other decks don't want, that I want to build the board with immediately, that I'm not punished for holding this sweet artifact or sweet enchantment that I drafted, that getting it out of my hand to enable it is in my
play smoothly with the civilized game plan, as
Mm.
opposed to kind of having their own. Like this, you could argue this one does.
Right. I suppose I would question how much of black is intended to work with civilized.
It's something we'll have to find out. If I remember
it's
correctly,
2.
it's
We have
less than white
black,
and blue.
white, and black blue.
Okay.
It's like
Well,
black
then,
is a
yeah,
little bit less.
that makes perfect sense then.
Yeah. Cool.
All 3 of the Esper colors are intended to be civilized.
But
So
black is doing a little bit other stuff as well.
yes, but what I mean is all of the Esper pairs are civilized. Blue, white, blue, black, and
which
black.
itself kind of feels weird. Like, to me at least. I don't know. It's like I don't feel like we typically get situations where an entire 3 archetypes are all kind of doing the same thing. It's like I know that they won't actually be doing the same thing. Like the ways in which you're enabling it, the payoffs that you're getting are all going to be different depending on the different decks.
Well, from what we've seen of the cards, the blue is like flicker. Black white has a little bit more of this kind of aristocrat feel to it, like because white's producing tokens and black can do things with the body. I believe we've seen that. Maybe not. Yeah, no, you might be right. Yeah.
It's a bit strange, but we should see how they're differentiated first, I suppose.
Yeah, we will see a little bit about that. Maybe it's just like a poor description from Matt, where it's like, okay, there is actually more to differentiate it. He just didn't label it. Cool. Are we good to move on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm good to move on.
All right, our next card is the City Roost Bats. It is 2 and a black for a 2/1 creature bat with flying. It's almost a Windrake.
Why not a 2/2 is my question.
Because making black feel slightly less like blue. That's it. Probably. There's one of the things where it's like, oh, this feels kind of right for black's flyers to be a little bit worse than blue or whites. Which is not, I don't know. We're not going to get into like the, should the color pie be this way?
Well, in standard right now, we have 3 3-mana or 2 3-mana bats, both of which are 2/1 flyers with an ability.
This is just very bad.
Yeah, you might
give it like a minor ability.
Yeah, you might want to give it a minor ability. It could certainly stand that.
Sure. I mean, it's almost curve filler at this point. Like, not actually, because it's like pretty decent, but it's like from a design perspective.
But he's a City Roost bat, so he could pay 1 mana to become an artifact until end of turn, or something. Something like.
That would be interesting.
I just don't have problems with this. It's like you only need to start encroaching onto this text area if there's noted to be things that are missing.
I see.
Like if we go through and go like, oh, there's actually not enough of this thing.
Right. So it's space that it's prime real estate if you need something to do. If you need to do something.
Yes.
But you don't need to mess with it yet.
Yeah, and I certainly do tend to overcomplicate things, so I will give you the nod on that one, Zoo.
Okay.
I would say that this art is the worst we've seen so far.
Well, it just has no personality. It's just a bat, and it's low
Right.
quality. And it's like it's not
Right.
even in an environment that feels particularly Babylos. It's like
Right.
late at night. It doesn't fit with any of
This
the.
could be on Innistrad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think definitely the idea of tying it into like, hey, these are bats that are roosting and like the eaves of houses or something in a city is really cool. You're gonna find art of that? I hope. Probably not. Let's see, I guess. All right.
Let's move on.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm good to move on.
Our next card is the Gillaback Outriders. I'm gonna complain about this after I finish reading this card. I'm gonna say Gillaback Outriders. It is 2 and a black for a 3/2 creature, human nomad. It has Endure for 1 and a black. So once again, Endure is when the creature attacks. If it has never endured before, you can pay its Endure cost to put a plus counter on it, and it endures. And when Gillaback Outriders endures, it gains Menace until end of turn. So it's a 3 mana 3/2 that when it attacks, you can pay 1 or black to make it a 4/3 that temporarily has Menace, which feels pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I am appealed to by this. That seems like a good rate. Seems like a fun thing to do. You know, have Menace for a turn. You know, maybe just, like not actually having true Menace is obviously like way worse than just having it, or only having it for one turn is way worse. But it does get the fun of like, haha, you know, I'm just gonna like hit you for 4 damage. You know, I'd rather have it all the time, so you eventually were forced to 2 for 1 yourself. But at the very least, it's a lot of good damage for that turn.
And 4-power Menace is quite good at commons, so I'm glad that it doesn't do that really.
Forever, yes, that would be too good. In terms of the name, I promised I was going to complain about this. Why is this spelled this way? The Gila monster is with 1
It suggests to me that it's not meant to be referring to Gila monsters.
That's just confusing then.
But given the art, it seems like it is.
Yeah, like they're
or at least
lizards.
Referring to, like, they look more like dinosaurs, but their face is like a monitor lizard,
it's very
like
strange.
a Gila monster.
And if it's supposed to be that thing where it's like, hey, we're doing magic, but we're like using words from languages that most of the players of Magic don't know how to pronounce, so we're going to change the name, then change the G. Right? If it's Hila, turn it into Hila.
Right, like Yorona Banshee.
Yeah, the classic Lorado card, Yorona Banshee, spelled with a Y. You know? So, get that fixed.
One way or the other.
Yes. Do you have any thoughts, Cleo?
Yeah, I would add that to strengthen everything you guys are saying, what I really like about this card is that from a draft perspective, it looks really attractive to play. I imagine that it plays out very well, and it gets me to draft Endure. It gets me to look at your mechanic and say, this looks sweet, this looks fun, it's a well-efficient creature, and I'm going to get at least one really great attack in. And then after that, you can either trade it off or continue attacking, and I think that it does support pretty well what Black is trying to do in its black-red and black-green side of things. So it seems good. I like this card, and I like the art.
Cool. And Simon does bring up in the comments a question about the fact that both of the Endure creatures that we've seen so far are nomads. So perhaps there's a bit of a tie-in with the Endure mechanic and nomads. Seems reasonable. Getting some Doharim flashbacks. What is it with this custom Magic server and nomads? I'm nomad. This makes me very happy. That was a terrible pun. Let's move on.
It was.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
I did not laugh.
I'm still here, though. I'm still on the stream. I didn't leave.
Cool. So something to look out for, maybe what the flavor was doing in White Blue, which was this very, like, hey, we're building up the cities. Maybe this is a bit of an abrupt transition into, like, the Black, hey, we're a bunch of people living in the desert. I don't think it feels pretty unfitting, but maybe there's some bridges to cross the gap there.
Well, if people are building up a city, they're not nomads, are they?
Well, yeah, I'm saying there's this big contrast here.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I don't know. I think these guys feel fine as nomads,
Yes,
but they would also feel fine as just warriors.
that
And
too.
if you wanted the uncivilized divide, you could have the, warriors versus soldiers,
Hmm.
essentially. I don't know if nomad is something that you want to be specific to this set.
Yeah, I mean, it is something to
Um,
think about in that we are seeing nomads as a thing in custom Magic in this community.
right,
Maybe there actually is an argument for, hey, you should do that because of these eventual
right.
potential tribal
And if
synergies. But
and
individually,
if
this
any
definitely has
set,
no need to be it, I think.
right. If nomads are going to be in any set, I like them in this one particularly
Hmm.
because it's based on, real history, and nomads were a huge part of
Hmm.
Middle Eastern
Like
history.
Bedouin peoples.
Yeah,
Oh,
not just Bedouin.
and the Israelites.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. For 40 years. Okay, I'm
There's
starting to like that more.
I'm not going to go off on this because I took a whole semester of ancient Middle Eastern history. Um,
Cool. So yeah, maybe something to think about. Any other thoughts, Cleo?
I'm good to move on.
Cool. Let us move on. We have the Salazar's Butcher. It is 2 and a black for a 2/2 creature human soldier, like we were just talking about. When it enters the battlefield, you may have target creature get -1/-1 until end of turn. So we've
seems
seen
reasonable to me.
similar things to this before. It's a not very good body that gets better when you kill their 2/1.
Like their bat,
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, this murders the crap out of that bat. Oof.
just butchers it.
Yep. This is also good. We saw a little bit of like a 1/1 token things in white. A little bit of that. And we'll probably see that in red, given that white-red is supposed to be like a go wide thing going on. So probably just very good, for getting 1.5s for 1. Not 2 for 1s. They're 1.5s for 1s because they're killing a token.
Hmm.
I'm okay with it. I like the art a lot.
Sure.
Flavor wise,
hmm?
go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I like the art other than the fact that the scythe has absolutely zero definition.
Definitely, you can even just outline that and it would look better.
Yeah.
What I
Maybe
wanted to
some
say,
chopping.
yeah, it's supposed to look far away, but I still think, it contrasts with the handle of the scythe too much.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think the flavor of this, it tells me that Salazar is just a brutal empire, which
Mm-hmm.
is cool, and informative.
Yeah, good world building.
Uh-huh.
Just through the name. You don't even have to read the flavor text, but then when you do, you're like, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. That
makes
seems
sense.
correct.
The flavor text might be a little too elaborate.
Sure. I mean, let's not dwell.
Yeah, I'm not dwelling on
Yeah.
it, just like putting that out there.
All right. Are we good to move on?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm good to move on.
Cool. Our next card is Blood Covenant. It is 3 and a black for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, create a gold token with sacrifice this, add 1 mana of any color. So kind of like we've seen with treasures or gold tokens on one-off designs before that in Theros, for example. So then, in addition to that, it says the enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has lifelink. So this is a strict upgrade to cards we've seen before, like Mark of the
Mark of the
Vampire.
Vamp.
So this is
Yeah.
Mark of the
And
Vampire,
that one
but
was
it's
pretty good,
kind
wasn't
of
it?
3 mana. Yeah, if I remember correctly, Mark of the Vampire is considered to be pretty okay, pretty
Mark
good.
was very good. Mark
Yeah.
was it was a high risk, high reward card as most auras are, but it was one that when they did not kill the creature, you won the game.
So makes this a little questionable, right?
This also, I'm sure you already know this, but it involves a rules patch for gold. Because aren't gold tokens like made as named gold in the
Ah,
Theros cards?
yes. So this is an example of a thing that designers do a lot accidentally, where they put gold as the type, not the name. Like how Cleo was, for example.
Or treasure.
So some templating changes there. Also, Simon points out in the format, this as a card enables Civilized, which is interesting, and it's kind of from a first perspective might sound like almost like oh, that's too good, but you're putting this on a creature. You're now saying, hey, if you want to murder my creature, the creature's now gone, the aura's now gone. That's taking a lot off of Civilized potentially, especially if it looks like your only creature on the board, which is totally possible. In these less creature heavy blue, black, white, there's more control-y decks that are playing all these artifacts and enchantments and stuff. So in addition to what we said before about the swinginess of just Mark of the Vampire as a card, right? And we're adding on that extra level of swinginess for the fact that this is both like a Civilized enabler and kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. This is very, very swingy, isn't it?
I also don't know if I just like auto-enabling Civilized at common.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a neat idea, but I think it would be better off at uncommon.
Mm-hmm. I think I agree.
Cleo?
Even more than that, auto-enabling it on a card that, as a drafter, you intrinsically aren't trying to take in your Civilized deck, because the Civilized decks intrinsically are more controlled decks.
Mm-hmm.
And even though this is a card that might be good in those decks, having the common, I guess what I'm saying is if you wanted to do the design of an enchantment that creates a gold token, I would rather see it done on something that isn't a creature aura.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of things, having a Mark of the Vampire card or an aura that can be that strong and limited, what is that like? Which archetype are we putting that in? If this is built directly for the Civilized decks, I'd rather see this be a different strong aura.
Mm-hmm.
If this is built for,
this is way better in something that is looking to like race the
for
opponent.
black green and black green.
Yeah,
like a mid-range deck.
I get it.
Yeah. And how good is it in a pure aggro deck and a pure black-red deck? Well, you're not going to have any other life gain. Then again, this amount of life gain on anything that has trample or anything that has menace can create a huge issue for your opponent. And so I don't necessarily dislike having the card in the set, but I think that I agree with all the points made.
Okay.
All right, we ready to move on?
In terms of a name, referencing Covenant is cool.
True.
In terms of, the biblical reference, I have no idea why you get gold.
Right.
I guess there's the idea
I would
of,
think that would be like
blood
a pact.
Blood for gold. But then that completely divorces it from like the biblical flavor of religious blood, a religious covenant pact.
Right.
It turns out a little bit too demonic for my tastes as well. Maybe this is a little edgy atheism going on here, unintentionally or otherwise. Not
I'm gonna go get a drink real
ideal,
quick.
let's say. So while you're doing that, though, I'll move on to the next card. Or I'm assuming you're good, Cleo?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. We will move on, and Calibur will just jump in as we are talking about this card. It is called Dark Dreams. It is 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards. That player loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. It's Mind Rot, but more expensive. But you drain life. It probably goes into exactly the same decks that Mind Rot does.
It seems fine to me.
I can't determine any specific reason for this being the way that it is, other than just kind of like.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm saying like, is the life loss relevant? Is the life gain relevant? And no, I think it's just like, hey, let's make a cool, slightly different variant on Mind Rot, or maybe especially like, hey, I didn't have good art for Mind Rot. Let's make a different card. Right? So
yeah.
I think this is
I mean, I think that it's fine. I think that it could be something else. It doesn't have to be. And I don't know if the life gain or life loss is particularly relevant. In a control deck, taking a turn off to cast Mind Rot kind of sucks, and so gaining life is nice. And so it's a question of, is that worth the 1 mana? Like if I'm in a black-blue or a black-white Civilized deck, and I'm choosing to play a card that's not an enchantment, that's not an artifact, and is not a creature,
you're just not that interested.
Well, I'm saying if I'm making all those choices, is this a card that I'm going to want? And I think the answer there is probably no. Yeah. So then it's a sideboard card for those decks, or a sideboard card for black-green. or maybe it's supposed to be a sideboard card for black red. And even in all of those situations, for
I
me,
can
it's
see that.
interesting enough that I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a mind rot. If there might be somewhere else that the mind rot can be put. Maybe, if we keep the I'm not 100% sure, but I don't hate the card. I don't love the card. Is kind of how I feel about it.
Yep, it seems fine to me. Any thoughts, Calibur?
Nothing further than what's said.
Cool. Let us move on. We now have the Endak City Enforcers. It is 3 and a black for a 2/4 creature human soldier. It has Civilized. Endak City Enforcers has Death Touch as long as you control an artifact, a creature, and an enchantment. So what is normally a just crappy body, 4-mana 2/4, not very good, becomes 4-mana 2/4 with Death Touch. Suddenly kills a lot while also not being amazingly difficult to kill.
Right.
What do we think
but
about
also
this?
being difficult to kill for small creatures for certain.
Yes.
I think that's pretty neat.
I think it's cool. Certainly, I adore the flavor.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the flavor. I'm good with the art. It is 2 Death Touchers a common. As far as Civilized goes, I like what this does for Civilized, because in my Civilized deck, he's totally fine when I don't have Civilized. Not like great, but I mean, like, he has a 4-mana 2/4, so he is going to block. He's going to help me
He
fight off
fits
the aggro.
Right.
I'm trying to be incredibly slow game plan.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this. I would be okay with this being pushed further as well.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it as is.
Actually, I think it's fine as is, because at
Yeah,
4
his
mana,
Death Touch is
it's
a
not
big
very
buff.
efficient, but it certainly does keeps aggro creatures off you, and then once it gets Death Touch, it'll keep even larger creatures off you.
Mm-hmm. And even can sometimes swing in with the Death Touch. Right?
Eventually,
Other
yes.
decks with large toughness. Sure. Is this the first instance of Civilized we've seen in Black Commons?
In black?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, interesting that it's at 4 mana. I mean, I imagine with Endure just as a mechanic wants to be going on somewhat smaller things. Like you don't really put Endure on a 6-drop. I imagine.
Not a common for sure.
Yeah. So it seems right a little bit that Civilized is occurring a little higher up on the mana cost there, just because those lower slots are desired by other things. Maybe some sort of spell could receive it at a lower cost or something. Just because it does seem a little strange for it to not exist in black in 1, 2, or 3 drop.
At lower cost.
Yeah.
I would say that you could take off your turns 2 and 3 to play an enchantment and an artifact.
Yeah, no, it
So
probably
that's a
plays
good
fine.
reason.
It just looks a little strange. But that is not actually a problem.
Just a fun note. I saw that the card above this started with D, and this one starts with E. And I saw the next one started with S. Usually I sort alphabetically, so I was like, huh, that's a long jump without any cards.
Fun facts in the life of Calibur. All right, are we good to move on?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. We have the Sting Brood Sandsifter. It is 3 and a black for a 3/3 creature, Scorpion Warrior. Scorpion people. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest back on top of your library in any order. So this is just kind of a self-mill, kind of grindy, get a little bit of card selection on a not horrible body.
I think the card selection is pretty nice. I think it's a little wordy, or maybe it's like Scry 3 essentially. At common, that's a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, not having to put anything on the bottom is
sure.
a little bit less complex.
Yes.
Takes a little bit less time as well. But yeah, maybe sounding a little bit weird there.
I will say this does make me ask, do we get a Scorpion King?
Do we get, so help me God, Scorpion Tribal?
Oof.
You know what to do,
I
man.
don't think we're getting Scorpion Tribal.
You
I'm
know
sorry
what
to
to do, man.
disappoint you.
I will be so disappointed.
I don't mean to disappoint you, be the bearer of news, but I don't think this Scorpion Tribal.
It hurts. It hurts
However,
for me to hear
Scorpion
that.
King seems completely reasonable to
Well,
ask.
wouldn't the Scorpion King have Scorpion Tribal? Come on, he's the king of his
Come
Scorpion.
on,
Well,
he's
I
gotta
mean,
be.
he might
He's
give
gotta be a
tribal.
Scorpion Lord.
Oh, this stings, man. Anyways, one thing I do find a little bit weird here is that we literally just saw a card with Death Touch, and then we saw a Scorpion that does not have Death Touch.
Right.
Yeah,
and they're
that feels
both 4
weird.
drops.
Yeah, so it's like these cards are maybe swappable around. I mean, I do get the idea that like this is Scorpion. It's obviously not civilized. He's in the middle of the dunes. This is not a city Scorpion. Whereas these are very clearly like, hey, some sort of hired army kind of thing going on here. Some mercenaries that is more in the civilization area. So I can see that. It does feel a little bad. Can they be a 4/2? The Stingbird Sand Sifter? Just
I mean,
get some
yeah, I
firepower
guess
going there? I do not know.
But you don't want both of your 4-drop bodies to be trash.
Ooh, yeah, that's true. Well, whatever. Do we have any other comments on that?
Nope.
Cool.
I'm
Let us
good to
move
move
on.
on.
We have the Adorned Naga, 4 and a black for a 4/4 creature Naga warrior, and it has Civilized. It gets +2/+0 and has Menace as long as you control an artifact, a creature, and an enchantment. So in addition to Scorpion people and Avens, and what else have we seen?
Were there Einok?
No.
I guess we
those-
haven't seen
those,
red-green yet,
We've
so there
seen a
wouldn't
lot of
be.
Lamasu.
Yeah, the Lamasu.
Oh,
Yeah, which are humanoid. We also have yet another humanoid in the form of a Naga. Maybe a little unnecessary? I don't know. Well, I mean,
I suppose it depends on what you're looking for, because if you want to have like a wide variety of races, give it a cosmopolitan feel,
yes.
then that's a good thing.
Yes, and that's basically what I was about to say as well. So probably that is maybe correct. The idea that, hey, we're building empires here. There are these peoples. They've been living in these different places. They're now coming into contact for the first time. They're having warfare between them, trade, something like that. As long as maybe that's hit upon specifically the things I was saying. If that could be hit on directly, that could be very nice. Cool.
As for the creature card itself, it seems like a very strong finisher for the civilized deck.
Oh yeah.
Not OP per se.
Whew. 6/4 menace. That's my kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I'm the numbers seem exactly correct. It's very appealing, like unless you're not in the civilized deck. Like this is kind of one of those cards where you keep talking about, Cleo, of a card that is going to be being wheeled to the civilized deck, because most decks are not really interested in a 5-mana 4/4. You're going to be in other colors.
I don't think other decks are going to be interested in that.
Yeah, you're going to be in some other color. You're going to have some other kind of better 5-drop to be going for, some sort of flyer or something like that. Such that when you get to this, you're like, hey, in my deck, this is a 5-mana 6/4 menace, which is really good. Solid. I like it. Any other comments?
Nope.
No, I'm good to move on.
Cool. Let's move on. We have Consumed by Chaos. It's 4 and a black instant. Destroy target creature. This is very plain.
Yeah, it
This
is.
is very extremely normal.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the name is really strong, and
The art does not support it.
Yeah, the art. I don't dislike the art, mind you. I don't think it's particularly
very
suited.
bad on this card. Yeah.
Or the card, yes. And I think the name is just too epic for just a 5-mana destroy target creature.
Mm-hmm. Something to think about there. In terms of how this puts a ceiling or doesn't put a ceiling on what can be killed by black in the format, I think that's probably correct. Like, I don't think this is the set for like a non-hard removal. Especially, we do see a lot of equipment being played. We do see a lot of endure creatures are getting bigger. Not being
Yeah.
not if slower black decks weren't able to kill things because they got too big, just due to set mechanics. If other decks were able to grind them out or something like that, I don't. For 5 mana, that would be ridiculous and absurd. So I think this being hard removal is correct. There's nothing else more really to say.
Nope.
Destroy versus exile. I think destroy is also correct. There's nothing weird going on with that. Let's move on to the next card.
Yeah, I'm good to move on, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to the Executioner's Podium. Or I hope I don't go there, but let's talk about it anyways. We have 4 and a black for an enchantment aura. Enchant land. So we're seeing another one of these enchant lands. We saw one in each of white and blue. And for this one has enchanted land has tap. Each opponent loses 2 life. So when we talked about the white one, the white land aura was one that had you be able to tap to gain 2 life. And we talked extensively about kind of the gameplay problems with that, where that was just making games last too long. It was effectively like an answer to 2 drops. We were very kind of down on that card. So we might think, this does exactly the opposite. This ends games. This makes, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be like a singular win condition. This can just be, hey, I have whatever clock I have. I have that, that 6-4 menace or something like that. I'm just going to speed that up even more. I finally got my civilized online. The game is going to end now. What do we think about that?
I mean, it sounds good to me. The way you said it, I expected there to be some big twist.
No. I'm very
I
positive
actually,
on the card.
I, for the most part, really dislike the enchant lands. I like this one. It is bad, but I think it's bad in a good way. I think that it's supporting a lot of what I like in kind of these kind of cards. So what I mean by that is, so my black-red aggro deck is probably going to be okay playing one of these cards. It's really difficult to stop this land. Once it gets going, it's difficult to stop. So what does that mean? It means it ensures the game's end. It also means that the card's not actually like, yeah, it's great in multiples, but that's assuming that I flood out. I no longer have creatures to block with if I'm behind. It is only going to be good if the board is stalled, so I don't get to play very many of them.
I think this is more of a sideboard card for black-red, because you don't really want to be playing this in main board. It's just 2 damage every turn, whereas you could have a creature with like 4 power for the same cost in black.
Well, it's 2 damage every turn that they can't block.
Right.
It's 2 damage every turn. I mean, like, it compares a little bit more to like Lava Axe in those decks. And so then that just is a question of how fast is the format, how much is it being gummed down. It's another card that I think is a pretty low pick, and so it is going to go late, which means that if I'm playing this as my final civilized enabler, that seems fine. If I don't have enough civilized enablers, I'm actually pretty happy playing this over the Naga. The Naga is like quite good and all, but she doesn't actually enable civilized, and so it just depends. Like in a vacuum, I really like the card, and then it just comes down to the practicality of like, can we afford another card that is a late pick, that is very niche in what it does?
Yes.
And is it actually win more or not? In a situation where I'm having to play this to enable civilized, having civilized gives me a huge bonus, then it is not win more, because it is enabling civilized and it's closing the game out. In a situation where
if like a black-red deck is like slowing their aggro later in the game and then just going to a stall plan.
If you have the Naga online, then it's win more.
Yeah. And I'm unsure about some of those things, but it's something that I would want to see in testing. I'm happy with this costing of it. I like this as an enchant land for testing, because it's not an effect that I think we see very often. And I think that in this set, I'm okay with it, and I like the art for it. So this card works for me.
Cool.
I definitely don't think you need to change anything.
Cool. Let's move on. So our next card is the Funerary Servant. It is 4 and a black for a 5/3 creature spirit. It's a vanilla.
Simple.
This is a black vanilla that we've seen a few times before. Canal Monitor in Rivals of Ixalan. That one weird demon in Innistrad. Yep. It's a vanilla.
As a vanilla, we obviously have to read the flavor text.
In terms, I'd prefer not to.
I'm not going to.
Okay. In terms of where the black vanilla does set up on the curve, if I'm a slow deck, I feel like I'm very, very, very rarely picking this card. Like I feel like I'm very kind of almost annoyed with how it slots up versus Adorned Naga. I think it's also a little. Does black normally get 2 5-drops? I thought it was more normal for them to only
This
get
is
1.
3 5-drops.
3 5. Well,
Yeah, it's a little bit too.
3 5-drop creatures.
Oh no, actually it's 4 5-drops, 2 of which are non-creatures.
Okay, I meant specifically creatures, but yeah, that's
But
also something to think about. Is
executioners,
that
yeah,
hey, there are a lot of cards at the 5 mana slot in black, especially 2 of which being creatures, and only like 1 of which being like situationally good, and the other being always pretty terrible. It seems problematic.
Yeah, I don't like the inclusion of this card.
Like I enjoy vanillas. I do not think this is where it should be.
there's numerous other stat lines that you could make this to make it more reasonable.
Well, how many
Even as a
2 and
5
3
mana.
drops
I'm
do
just
we
saying
have?
I don't think it should be at 5. I'm thinking this should be
I
like
agree.
a bear or something. I don't know.
Or 3-drop. How many 3-drop creatures were there?
Yeah,
I
let's
only
scroll up.
remember
How many
2.
2s and 3s do we have in black?
Looks like there's only 2 2s.
Wait, I only see
Bone Mesa Outcast.
We
is
only
a
saw
2-drop.
there's only 1 black 2-drop creature.
there's
This
a
should
there's only
certainly
one
be a
black
2-drop.
2-drop.
Okay,
Yeah, this should be a
that
bear.
is
Yeah,
definitely
sure.
Andy's a first pick 2-drop. This should certainly be a 2-drop, and it could just be a 2 mana 2/2. Like we
Yeah,
get
it could
that,
be a
and we just have
bear,
that in
or even
Dominaria.
Extremely
3.
cool. Well, I'm glad we solved that problem.
Congratulations, you solved the 5-drop puzzle.
And that'll certainly help out black red aggro, and it'll help out all the black decks in general, just to give them the curve filler.
Oh, absolutely. That's just a structural problem in black.
Say that again.
I'm saying that's just a structural problem in black. You know, having
Yes.
only 1 2-drop. That's just something that.
And that 2-drop being a first pick. Not only
Yeah.
is there only 1 2-drop, but it's a 2-drop that already should be going early regardless.
Yeah, it's not. You're not getting one of those situations where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna pick up this 2-drop because I need extra 2-drops. That's never gonna happen.
Right.
You know, you can't oops into a healthy curve.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Wizards has been doing fairly well in the last few sets. Is they make sure to have some pretty low pick 2-drops, so that if your curve's fucked up, or excuse my language, if your curve's messed up, you have access to this dorky 2 mana 3/1 white creature or 2 mana 2/2 black creature that in other limited formats, would have been insane. But these days, like pretty below power level, right? Or in Dominaria, there was also like the 2 mana 2/2 green ooze who was like pretty bad in limited, but you played him every once in a while, and you almost always had access to him. So you having access to those curve fillers, I think, is really important. And I mean, I'm pretty sure you could keep the same flavor of the card too. Like I like the art, and I like the flavor of the Funeral Servant.
I agree.
Yeah, it's very flexible. Yeah, in terms of where it can be for the flavor. Cool. Right.
This talks about someone important to the story, but
do you want to talk about the flavor text? Actually,
not much. I just want to say this obviously says that there's someone named Aishad who's important to this story.
Cool. So in addition to that problem that we just talked about and offered a solution for, are we seeing any other problems in terms of how black's curve is outlined, or how the different archetypes are supported?
Let's go through black and look at how many of the cards seem fairly conditional. Because for me, the power level difference right now of like the best black cards and the worst black cards is like pretty high. And you get that in sets clearly, but it seems a little bit. The gap seems a little bit big to me. So like we have Typhoid Rats, who I'll play in almost any black deck. But Mesa Outcast, I'll play in almost any black deck.
Debilitating Injury, playing almost any deck.
Yeah, all 3 of them I'll play in any deck. In Alliance, probably not playing in most decks. Outcast Precision, or whatever pump spell replaces it. I would kind of like to not have to play in most decks, right?
I agree.
With this advancement, I'm going to not play in most decks.
And even the like redesign that we suggested would like you'd play it in the Well, no, actually,
we didn't suggest a common replacement for that.
What?
We didn't suggest a common replacement for that, did
precision.
we? Oh, for precision,
Yeah, I was
yes.
gonna say
Okay.
if it changes into something that cares about Endure, that would be then played in the Endure deck.
Trivia of Salazar, I'm going to play in every deck, as well as the replacement that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
City Roost Bat. I'm not happy about playing in every deck, but I will play it in every deck.
Agreed.
Gillyback Outriders, I'll play in every deck. Salazar's Butcher, I'll play in every deck.
Okay, well, Salazar's Butcher, you play in almost every deck, but it is still a situational card.
It's situational, but you're
like you don't want to play it,
It
on
depends
3
on how many
generally
2-drops
So
he kills.
The thing is, in an aggro deck, he makes it so I can trade away some creatures. Like I can attack my 2-drop into their 3-drop and get the trade. And in a control deck, he helps clear up wide board. So I do think he plays in every deck. Blood Covenant, I'll play in every deck. I would. Dark Dreams, I would not play in most decks, right? And Deck Enforcers is situational. Sand Sifter is situational.
I think Sand Sifter is
Sand
pretty
Sifter is just a 4-mana 3/3.
I think that's the go-to 4-drop here.
Okay, so that's the go-to. So yeah, no, you're right. I'll play that in an aggro deck. I'm not super happy about it, but I will certainly play it.
Yes.
Adorn Naga, I'm ideally only playing in my Civilized deck.
Right.
Consumed by Chaos, I can probably only afford to play one of in most decks.
Right.
Executioner's Podium, I'm not playing in most decks.
Right.
So my count here is I lost
bad
count.
Cards.
It's like 50. It really is like 50-50. Like half the cards are conditional, which I think is a few too many. I'd like to see like 2 of those transitioned over to cards that I can play in more decks.
Right, and so obviously,
but the 3-drops are really solid currently speaking.
Oh, sorry.
The 3-drop creatures are there any 3-drop non-creatures? The 3-drop creatures are really solid.
Yeah.
So it seems like mostly the
high
cost non-creatures are kind of where the least power is. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, pushing Infernal Servant to 2, and then pushing one of your non-creatures is enough to do it on its own.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Just like pick a non-creature to make better.
Yeah, and I really think it's only one. So like Ruthless Advancement for me. So if you compare Ruthless Advancement to the what is it called? The 5-mana enchantment. Both of them are fairly conditional. The difference is the 5-mana enchantment I think is a conditional card that plays into the set themes very well. Whereas Ruthless Advancement is a conditional card that I will play in some decks and will be quite good in those decks, but does not.
I mean, obviously, before I did disagree with you on that point.
Okay, that's fair.
I think Ruthless Advancement is pretty good where it's at. Why could I not pronounce that?
All right. So, do we have any other comments on black? Any kind of why it feels very black?
It does.
Like there's not some endemic flavor problems in any way. All right. Well, let us move on then. Cool. So we're gonna move to red. We're gonna do the same exact thing as before. Sorted by CMC. The first card you should see is Bone Mesa Scavenger.
Do you want to read that out?
I will. One moment, please. Sorry. Okay. It is red for a 1/2 creature hyena. Ooh, hyenas. And it has Endure for red. So you play this on turn 1. It's a 1/2. You attack with this on turn 2, makes a 2/3, and then you play another one because you drafted 7 of them. It seems
that doesn't seem
amazing, but it's very flexible. Endure for only 1 means that you kind of can treat this as a 2-drop that you just kind of mix in the Endure whenever you kind of have nothing to do, with the big problem of that you have to attack to do it, which you have to find an opportunity both when you're playing something off curve, you're playing like a 2-drop on turn 3 or something, and when it's worth attacking in with it.
So I'll get to the art in a second. I actually think this card is quite good. It's a 2/2/3 in red that comes down on turn 1.
Right, I agree.
This is like constructed playable. Like in current standard, this would see play in constructed.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of like how you normally want to be curving out in limited, you want to be spending your turn 2 playing a 2-drop. right? Like I said,
But
I
you
talked
but
about
you've
the
already played your
funny-
2-drop into your turn 1. Like what I'm saying is you would play red 1 for a 2/3 haste. That's what this is, right? He's red 1 for a 2/3 haste. You just play the first half of the installment a turn earlier. Like he's quite good. I'm not saying that's a problem. I'm pointing out that the power level I think is there. And so then the next question is, how do you feel about a 2/3 in red for 2 mana? Because I think that okay, he has to attack to get the counter, but this guy can block. This is not our devil. This is not our 1 mana 2/2 who can't block.
You're saying play this on turn 1, endure him on turn 2, and then you just got some 2 damage in or something, and you just keep him as a 2/3 for the rest of the game. Block.
Right.
I certainly could, and that's not that the card. Something to me is kind of missing to feel red.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think that he should have a can't block clause or a must attack each turn of able, or just be a 1/1.
I
because
think a 1/1 could be completely reasonable, just to make it feel like that.
Sure. I think I would prefer this to attack each turn of able, but I really just like it being very clean, and so for that reason, I think 1/1 would be good.
And then my next comment is this: the art doesn't. I feel as though I've seen this art in some other card game. That might be.
It says
the artist credit says Hearthstone.
Yeah, I was have to and for me, when I recognize art right away, it does take me out of the spell of custom Magic. And so if there is an option for other art, especially when the card, it's not like it's an homage to the hyena from Hearthstone, because he doesn't. The hyena in Hearthstone's one who grows whenever a creature dies.
Is that this one? Oh, so this is like not iconic, but like classic.
Yeah, that's a pretty popular.
This isn't even just card. Like some random card that no one's heard of.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that re-arting it is worth it, and I understand that maybe he wanted a hyena, or
I don't even
really
feel
like the card, or
particularly fitting.
I don't feel like it's particularly unfitting.
No, it's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay.
It's replaceable.
It's not like, oh, hyena. Yeah, it's exactly.
I think
what
it's
wanted.
nice art, but it's definitely replaceable.
And I do like having this be a pushed card. I mean, kind of like what I said with the other Endure ones. Like, I'm pointing out that, it's actually much stronger than it looks, but I do like that you push your mechanic. I think that for us as designers, being like, I'm going to end up in this black-red aggro deck, and I get to play 5 of this Endure mechanic, and I'm enduring every 3 turns.
Especially
with your mechanic
we'll see later a little bit of Endure Tribal.
So
just making sure that there's this card that you're going to be picking very highly that has Endure, and you're going to be using its Endure. Maybe almost too early.
Yeah, I think that this is a mechanic that if you don't push it a little bit, then it'll seem kind of boring, as Zoo was talking about a bit earlier. But I think of course you need to be careful not to over push it like everything. But I think pushing it a little bit is definitely needed.
Cool.
We ready to move on?
Yeah, well, I did think about the fact that when we do look at where the Endure synergy is, we might find that this enduring on turn 2 might actually be kind of annoying for that. Like it runs into kind of the same kind of feel bads you were talking about, Cleo, with cards that disincentivizing you from playing them early, even though that's when you want their synergies.
True.
So maybe this wants to be change such that it is enduring more likely on turn 3 or something like that.
Can we talk about that when we get to it?
I mean, with the current costing, this could have Endure 1 like colorless and red, right? And so, and I'm not saying you should push it, but I mean, like I don't think I'm going to feel awful if I endured with this, not playing my 2-drop, right? Leaving up an extra mana for me, because I'm recognizing, I made a 2/3 that is attacking in turn 2. I don't feel awful about that, right? I think I'm just reiterating what I said already and not actually responding to your point, so I'm good to move on.
No, that's fine. I was going to say maybe this could be like a 1/1 with haste endure for 2. Maybe that'll endure slightly later. Potentially.
That's interesting. That's pretty
you just
powerful.
Said you're okay with just enduring it for 2 mana.
I mean, that's even more powerful, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like the world needs its
it makes you feel more
its monastery mentors, you know.
It's not as comparable to Monastery Mentor.
Okay, that's fair.
Maybe Swiftsphere.
But
I meant Swiftsphere.
aggressive.
But it's not even that strong. It's not even that strong. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It needed strong red aggressive creatures, and I think
Yes.
that I think you could push him more. I mean, I also think it's fine where it is, and I see what your point is of enduring later. Like a 1 mana 1/1 haste with endure 2 or endure 3 would be completely reasonable.
Cool. Let's move on.
Huh.
We have Cut Down. It is red for a sorcery. Cut Down deals 2 damage to target creature. Scry 1. It's a sorcery speed shock with added scry, which is really good. Like, this feels like a strong card. Like, I mean, in draft, it's very, very decent.
I mean, it's playable in standard too.
But this is, yeah, cool. I mean, maybe
I'm fine with it.
this cry, but I don't know.
I mean, it does it without hitting opponents or being an instant. I don't think it's like
I don't think it's overpowered. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
The scry is huge, and I think that anything you can do to make hitting land drops in the early turns better is worth the blowback of how it affects the mid to late game. And that's like an overstatement, but in that sense, I'm completely fine and happy with this card.
Almost from like a design perspective, I'm almost kind of unsatisfied of it being a sorcery, just because then it isn't a turn 1 play, right? It's not.
Oh, that's fair.
You know?
That's fair.
Like you can't or I guess. Well, okay, no, you know
that
what?
doesn't have anything to do with it being a sorcery. That's to do with it only targeting creatures. You only want to play it when an opponent has a creature that it'll actually affect, and therefore you can't play it, turn 1.
And I'm wrong for another reason, which I was thinking of only when you're on the play.
Right, and but you're still the card is a first pick. Like it's still
easily.
A huge tempo advantage from what we've seen of the set. There's 3 and 4 mana creatures that this kills, right? And so anytime that I get to pay 1 mana to deal with that, and I get a scry out of it, I'm gonna be very, very happy.
Some tempo and some value. Yeah, baby, cool stuff. I think this is our first introduction to this character who we see in a lot of different arts in the set. Shalana, it's a planeswalker. The actual character itself, all the art's coming from Pathfinder, if I remember correctly.
Interesting. It does say Pathfinder right there.
Nice. So yeah, we'll see a little bit of that. Maybe we'll see if there's some cool mechanical, flavorful stuff going on. I hope. I don't like this name. This name, I don't know if it just doesn't feel like a burn spell to me. And I mean, neither does the art look like a burn spell.
It doesn't feel like this burn spell.
Yeah.
It feels like if there was a large burn spell of like a samurai or something, that would be appropriate for Cut Down.
Yeah.
But like just for a shock and scry of like fighting a scorpion, that doesn't seem
also
right.
The art doesn't even put that much focus on her.
Right,
It's
exactly.
more like the scorpion is about to sting her.
Right.
It
doesn't make it bad art, but
but there's
just makes it inappropriate for this flavor.
Yeah, a little weird. All right, let's move on.
Let's move on. Good catch.
Kindled Fury. It's red. It's a reprint, but I'll read that anyways. It's red for an instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. It's a mediocre combat trick.
Yep.
Especially for how slow this environment's looking. Maybe.
I mean, it can still like turn the tide. You don't use it as damage to face. You use it to turn to combat.
Well, of course, I'm just saying is like it was a more impactful combat trick.
I'm actually like pretty big on Kindled Fury. For 1 mana for first strike, like with just 1 red, instant creature gains first strike. Like we're looking at black a second ago. If you think about attacking into Typhoid Rats, you think about attacking into a 2/4 Death Touch. These are things where first strike, if you're comparing it to some of the other options, like is pretty good, I think. With that said, it could be more impactful, but I'm completely fine with Kindled Fury.
No, and I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying notable. That I think that makes it slightly worse than it otherwise would be, which affects our evaluation of like red as a color.
Yes. I would be interested in your guys' opinion of the art.
It's
in what
certainly
way?
Furious.
Yeah,
There's
like
no
it gives off
kindling occurring.
It gives off emotion. It gives
like
off
a
other
kill
things
spell
as well.
or creature
Yeah,
art.
I agree. Like, or yeah, a creature like Merciless Executioner, which I believe was an orc.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be appropriate art for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It feels like the creature is already dead. It doesn't feel like I'm fighting someone, right?
Yeah, I definitely
And
agree.
so that for me, like I just
Like honestly, maybe like swap these two arts that we just saw. Right? Shalala gains first
yes,
strike until end of
actually,
turn.
that you could
And
literally
this
swap the
orc
two.
deals 2
Yep.
damage and scries 1 by looking at their guts or something. Yeah, maybe not perfect, but there's some art swaps that can be made to happen here. And actually, from a design perspective, I like the fact that with Endure, it's always a little bit awkward because you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I need to attack. I want to psychologically feel like my creature's going to be safe. And I'm also having to put in a lot of my mana for the turn to do that. So I actually really like this in terms of being a very flexible, keep my creature safe while I'm enduring it option. So I just think that psychologically feels very good. You know, it's very easy to work in as the final point of mana on a turn where I'm enduring something. You know, keep it safe.
Yeah, I like that. I'm
Especially
good to move on.
in terms of with combat tricks as well. There's kind of that there's almost that psychological element of, well, opponent, I'm just attacking you because I want to endure my creature. You know, I'm not trying to trick you or anything. I just need to endure my creature. There's just value here. Ha! Get wrecked. First strike.
Turn 1, Bone Mace's Scavenger. Your opponent plays a 1/3, and then you swing in, endure, and play Kindled Fury.
That sounds really good. And yeah, that's getting through 3 toughness too, so that's not bad.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I like it. Cleo
Cool.
also plays well with our type.
Yep.
I like this as our red combat trick.
All right, let us move on. We have Smelt. It's a reprint. Red for an instant, destroy target artifact. So this ties in very heavily to a lot of what we were talking about when we looked at previous cards that hated on artifacts or enchantments in the environment, where we said from the perspective of being a player who's drafting the set, we don't really want to see hate that's this efficient. You know, this is not flexible hate. You know, it only destroys one thing. It doesn't do anything else other than destroy it. But if you are expecting people to be putting their entire livelihoods of a game on the existence of on their board of an artifact and enchantment, seeing this on the opponent side of the field is just awful.
And even more so than a null, this I can top deck this card and just fit it into my curve anywhere and get a huge tempo advantage.
Right.
We've also just seen 2 other red 1-drops that all 3 of us rather praised. And
all
this
3
one,
of the last 1-drops we saw were certainly playable.
Right, and I felt add something to the set to have it 1 mana. This is an effect that if the intent of this is specifically for constructed, then I could see keeping it. But if the intent is for limited, I would much rather see it moved up to like 4 mana and be
Smash to
destroy target
Smithereens or something, which would fit this art
easily.
Well, Smash to Smith, yeah, certainly. But if we're trying to push Civilize more and it's not a problem, having it be a destroy land or destroy artifact, like 4 mana or 5 mana destruction, is more of what I'd want to see as the sideboard card against Civilized.
What is that called again?
I don't know, like Decimate? I don't know.
Something. Whatever.
Decimate is...
That's the red and green card from a long time ago. Or just talking about whatever the... Demolish. 3 in a red. Artifact or land, yeah. Probably... And
But
also,
yeah, Demolish
fits
actually might not be
fine as
good.
well.
Demolish might actually be a problem if you're trying to push all these land enchantments. So I take that back. I take that suggestion back. I don't want to be destroying
still
land.
4 mana. That's still not amazing. You know? Because you're effectively using it as enchantment removal at that point. Like, the land is nice, but it's
red
not
enchantment
actually insane.
removal, Judge?
I think. Well, we'll see. Just because all those land auras are so expensive that when the opponent is casting them, so you kind of know that you're destroying a land that they don't necessarily need very much. You know?
Okay, I'd like to change my suggestion to a Ruinous Gremlin variant.
Like a creature that you sacrifice to shatter.
A creature that is too bad to play main deck that has an expensive sacrifice to shatter.
Okay.
That is what I'd rather see in this slot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, moving on.
Yep. We have the Ashes of Anku. 1 and a red for a sorcery. Create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. It's dragon fodder, but in red. Or I'm sorry, but with elementals.
I do have a minor note on the name. Another prominent set that will be compared to yours, a prominent custom set, has a prominent card called Ash Aku. So if you wanted to make this like Ashlings of Anku, something to differentiate it a little more.
Isn't Ashling a character name?
Ashling's
the
Pilgrim?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
something to think about.
Something minor like that to make it just sound a little more different.
I'm okay with this card. I mean,
Obviously,
like it's clearly meant to support.
Premier card for the red-white archetype. You know, just like brings you, if you're in red, into probably white, maybe. You know.
It also is a spell for your prowess deck that can be a 2-mana drop filler. So I think it fills a few spots, and so then you're kind of looking at like, well, if this is our spell that makes tokens, we're choosing this over maybe something that costs more that makes haste creatures, or maybe something that costs more that has flash. And I think that in general, this being a dragon fodder variant is the version of it that I like the most. I like how it's done, and I'm happy with this card.
You know, thinking about it a little more, I don't know if elemental tokens are even right for your set. They seem a little more wild and connected to the land in a way that I don't think is central to your set. I think you could come up with more appropriate tokens in general.
I mean, specifically, this is trying to make a flavor statement about one of the mythics. Like the god that made this world is Anku. He's like a Jund aligned, but actually 5-color creation destruction god. And this is supposed to be I know he has a lot of cards in the set that are dedicated to the flavor of, hey, Anku destroys, but hey, he also creates. And here is, he creates things, but it's like Flame of Chaos, you know, which is also very similar to another custom set that I wouldn't have anything to do with at all.
I'm okay with it.
But I think the flavor's fine. I don't think it's wrong.
All right then.
Like it could also extremely easily be other things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a way to get some of what you're talking about, Zoo, even more into it. If this is supposed to give me the hint that there's that god, maybe it's something like the foretelling of Anku creates the elemental tokens.
Sure.
Or something that
name.
Even more clearly makes me ask the question of
who is this?
Why the heck are these elementals?
Yeah.
But in some way maybe answers that in the flavor text. Maybe there's a way to do that even more. I don't know.
Cool. All right, we good to move on?
Yep.
All right, we have the Caprin Racketeer. It is 1 and a red for a 2/1 creature, Goat Rogue, and it has prowess.
Is that our first goat boy?
Typical, yeah. This is, I think, the first goat person we've seen in the set. As Ruben's pointing out in the comments, a little questionable why it's not a satyr. But if I remember correctly, satyrs specifically have also the legs of a goat. It's like they have the legs and the head of a goat, but not the torso. So
are there other satyrs in the set?
It's impossible to tell. I think they're all goat.
Right.
So satyrs also smile. This guy's not smiling, so he can't.
Yeah, he's a little too. He's like, I haven't been to a party in 10 years.
So what does red having a 2-mana 2/1 prowess over a 2-mana 1/3 prowess say about the set? Because a lot of the times in red we don't get we tend to get a 1/3 prowess.
It's actually one of the things that I think is slightly overstated by custom designers. Custom designers really enjoy the 1 red 1/3 prowess, but I think we've only actually seen it twice.
Well, okay. The thing is, with prowess, you want the creature to survive a lot of the time, and so a 1/3 really makes the prowess matter a lot more because it's not going to be doing a lot of damage when you don't have prowess. But when you do get prowess, it is going to continue swinging in and getting prowess triggered. Whereas
It's
the
not gonna
2-1 with
die.
prowess, you have it, and it can be good in and of itself without prowess. But when you do swing in with prowess, it'll often just die that turn.
Mm-hmm. And this implies maybe
Well-
more of a reliance on like tricks that grant unblockable or bounce or freeze effects in blue if there's a lot of those at the lower mana cost or something, which I don't think we saw one of the previous. I don't think we saw anything that granted like unblockable or something like that. You know?
We have not seen unblockable.
Yeah. So I think this is just like a slightly worse stat line for a prowess creature.
Well, okay,
Specifically,
it's a
the
slightly
important
worse
thing-
stat line for prowess.
Yeah, that's what
but
I
it
was
doesn't
gonna
make it
say.
a worse card.
Yeah. So
No,
it makes the
no, I
prowess matter
actually-
less. It just makes it like a decent card in every red deck.
Right,
more
it's
generically
better.
good.
It's better in non-prowess decks, basically.
Mhm.
Like in a deck where I might or might not have prowess on turn 3, this is much better. In a deck where I'm always going to have the prowess enabling, he's I would say worse.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just kind of like more compares to Majoring Bully than it does to the 1/3s that we saw in like among the Jackal one that we saw.
Mhm.
In that he more favors. So like this is going to be better in a black. It just depends on what our goal is, right? Like this, I'm completely happy playing this in my black red aggro deck, right?
Yeah.
Like I might not always have prowess. When I do, it could be a huge blowout, especially when I'm giving him first strike off a 1-mana spell.
Definitely.
Mm.
And
But
it's
on the
4 power first strike.
but
Okay,
on the
that's pretty-
other
that's
hand,
pretty hot.
in my blue red prowess deck, he's not as good simply because he's harder to get because he is a later pick because I'm
Other
given
decks
less.
are going to be grabbing him. Yeah.
Yes, because the black red deck is happier to take him, because our green red endure deck is going to take him as a filler when they need it.
Well,
I'm
as
less
a-
likely to wheel it.
As a straight up blue red prowess deck, you might regularly choose to have a 1/3 prowess over a 2/1 prowess if you just had the choice straight up.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because they get to attack for free so often.
Right.
Because a lot of times in those decks, you just kind of peck in with your 1/3 and continue to attack with it until the turn they challenge, and then you play your spells. And in those other turns, you just get in the free one.
So basically, what we're getting at is that considering the fact that blue red is specifically supposed to be your typical like tempo prowess deck, we think that this is wrong to not be a 1/3.
I'm unsure what other support is for the.
Unless there's other prowess creatures, because having multiple prowess creatures in red at common would strongly suggest the prowess archetype, even if each of them is playable in other decks.
Yeah, I'm slightly. I haven't seen enough of it and don't have the full map in front of me. It's more these are comments for Matt to think about when they're looking
Definitely.
over and reviewing it, right?
Yeah,
Do we have anything else we want to say?
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right.
Cool. Our next card is the Rugged
Yeah.
Wilder. It is one.
You know
red.
what? I will add. I do notice that he's a rogue, and our blue prowess creature was also a rogue, and I like that they're both the same class.
Says something a little bit about the world that the prowess creatures aren't wizards, but rather rogues.
Yes,
That's
absolutely. And well, we talked about that flavoring some for the blue red when we were in blue, and I like that. I like that flavoring that they're rogues who are nimble and help you. I believe the other one had flavor text about helping you travel, right?
Oh, and this is a
Or sneaking you
racketeer
through-
as well. So this is crime.
Right.
Prowess is associated with crime. That's really
Wh-
interesting.
That's kind of sweet flavor, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
like
like using guile.
that. Yeah, street knowledge. Like it even says that in the flavor text.
Definitely it does.
That's cool. All right. Move on again.
This time for real.
This time for real. It's the Rugged Wilder. It's 1 in red for a 3/1 creature, human warrior. It's a vanilla. Has red gotten a 2/1 or a 3/1 for 2? Vanilla?
Do we care?
No, that was going to be the next question. But I'm just saying, I don't think we have, but it definitely does not seem like an impossibility. This might be too good as a vanilla in terms of for what else
We just
we've
had
been
one in
seeing
Battlebond.
in red commons.
No, wait.
Like our other red low drops have been pretty solid, and then this is the vanilla, which is usually and we're saying no, the vanilla is also pretty okay.
You know what this says to me? This is a 3/1, and the other 2-drop is a 2/1.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want the other one to become a 1/3 because this is a 3/1.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, especially because you couldn't make this like a piker either. Like you couldn't even make this into a.
You can make it a bear.
I feel like that even that would still feel too weird. I don't know, personally speaking.
Yeah, it would be a little odd.
I think we're at the point of Magic Design where this is fine.
Yes.
I agree. I just think it has
We're talking about in
ramifications.
comparison to other designs that are around this 2-mana slot, and I was saying especially in terms of just what we've seen in terms of power level in red. I think every single red card we've looked at so far has been pretty good to great.
Well, we're also at the bottom of the curve. It's just saying, like,
It's true.
we have yet to see if red can, like, if your opponent's playing
Sustain
that black card who ETBs and gives something -1/-1, which
don't know.
is not like a particularly insanely high pick, but it kind of wrecks a lot of the cards we've seen, right? So, like, how does red beat any kind of mid range? Is not, and it is, and I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying, like, so far we're just seeing really strong cards in the bottom of the curve.
I don't know. I just don't especially like seeing this much density of good at the same slot. Like especially just the 2-mana red creature slot. Just all of them being pretty good. You know? So I mean that's once again yet another, like he was saying, reason to make this a 1/3 prowess to differentiate them more. But yeah.
Or just to move this up the curve and not have another red 2-drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like 2 red 2 drops.
I'm not a fan of the idea of red only having 1 2-drop.
Do we only have one? I thought we had.
There's the token spell.
Oh, the token spell counts as a creature too.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, so red
we might need 3 though. You might be right.
I think for how slow we were seeing like white, blue, and black. Like black was a little bit faster, but not like it was just like a normal speed for black. I think. So having red be a little bit faster in this kind of environment, I think makes a lot of sense.
Hey, see you later, Ruben.
So, bye, Ruben. So I think having their vanilla be a low drop like this is, or I'm sorry, having 3 2-drops, I think it makes sense for that, you know. But yeah, can we move on?
Yeah.
I'm good to move.
Our next card is Tormenting Voice. You know it well. It's 1 red for a sorcery. Has an additional cost to cast it. Discard a card. Draw 2 cards. It's Tormenting Voice. It does Tormenting Voice things.
It's certainly a card where I'm not sure how good it is in this set. It's always kind of nice to have around until you do more playtesting and find out.
Well, I mean, the set's not doing very much with the graveyard.
Certainly, so, but if we have,
that's one thing.
I mean, anything that helps get through land clumps, I think is great. It does clearly help a blue-red non-creatures matter prowess kind of deck get through clumps and enable stuff. Is it any good in the other archetypes? Maybe not, but you still might play one just to kind of help you get through stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I don't.
You might even discard like non-creatures to draw into lands if you have like a lot of
absolutely
on the board.
Yeah.
Especially, like that's something that, I mean, it's specifically in just red where maybe you wouldn't care so much, but with Endear you maybe care a little bit more. I don't know. Cool. Are we good to move on that one? Not a whole lot to say. It's a bit more of a subtle developmental thing.
Right.
All right.
Whereas obviously we've only been talking about the most obvious elements so far.
Ha ha ha. It's subtle and it relies on things that we don't necessarily have a full grasp on, not having looked at literally every single card in the set. Our next card is Act of Treason. It is 2 red for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. So this is just your classic literal Act of Treason effect. If I remember correctly, Wizards has said that they're moving these effects up to uncommon mostly.
That's my memory as well.
So that is obviously the most pressing concern here.
The art really does not work for me on this.
It also does not.
I think the art is actually completely suitable here, personally.
Well, so I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to be a reference to one of the legends that's in the set that we see later.
One of the specifically the Flip Gods.
Oh, yeah. Is that so?
Yes. And I like that they're trying to work that in, but I don't completely understand how this is in any way depicting an act of treason.
It's more just like, I'm sassy.
Yeah. Is she doing something that's treasonous? Is she casting the
Um,
act? Is she seducing me into being treasonous? I'm just not
well,
completely sure.
so what I was thinking was that this is reminiscent of Aladdin, wherein like basically Aladdin takes Jasmine out when she's not supposed to be out and shows her the world. I think it's a little of a stretch, but comparable.
Eh,
Yeah. Anyway, I see what you guys are saying.
perhaps. Well, so
Oh,
other
because
than
she's on a
the
magic carpet.
Yes.
I thought that was a cape or like a background.
I don't know. I mean, it's
Weird.
just because some of the art just feels so like this
That's
next art that we're going to
weird.
look at looks really great to me and really paints this world.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mhm.
feels like it's from a different
I
world
mean,
than the
well,
card in the next.
the big thing is the difference between Arabia and the Mesopotamia. Right, the set is supposed to
That is
mostly
definitely.
be Mesopotamia and the Levant, right? And having
You have
Arabian
a number of
elements.
things compounding there.
Hmm?
Well, you also have the art style like a much more
Different.
Cartoonish.
yeah.
It is almost Disney.
I'm fairly certain it's intended to depict Disney.
Yeah. All right. Well, are we good to move on there?
We're good.
Cool. The next card is the Borsupa. The Borsupa Nomad. 2 and a red for 3/2 creature human nomad. It does endure for red. And whenever a creature you control endures, Borsupa Nomad deals 1 damage to each opponent. This seems really
That's
good.
really good.
This is a strong card because it's a 3 mana 3/2 or a 4 mana 4/3, which is
Which are
really
both
good.
quite
And you don't
good.
have to choose when you play it. You can choose when you get the next one, and it does 1 damage to each opponent, and it synergizes with the hyena we just saw. This is
Right.
strong.
And
Wow.
other endure creatures.
I mean, like we keep talking about the idea of, push the cards that have your mechanics on them. Does that apply to cards that specifically synergize with your mechanic as well, where you say, hey,
Not at common so
even
much.
push even the cards that synergize with your mechanic? And yes, as Calibur said,
I don't think
I think
this
I would agree.
card. I don't think this card needs to be playable outside of an endure deck.
Mm-hmm.
This card specifically wants to be something that goes to the endure deck, and then they're like, "Oh, sick."
Yes. So, but one thing to think about is, and I've brought up this question with Matt before, is does there even want to be endure synergy at common at all?
I agree that
Right?
that's a question.
Like a lot of the endure designs we've seen so far just kind of stand on their own, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think like for the excitement factor we were talking about before, it's not completely unreasonable to have it
Mhm.
common, but I do think there are reasons not to do it.
Yeah. Maybe it's one of those things where it's like, say, you really really have to work against the excitement issue, or maybe your data of showing the mechanic to people has where everyone's just not very excited about it. You have to do these kind of very very strong synergistic things at common, but we don't know that.
I'll give it this: Endure is not Outlast.
It is not.
It does remind me a bit of Outlast. Having a matters mechanic with a +1/+1 counter.
Mm-hmm. But thank God it's not caring about the counter.
Right.
Well, why? Why is that bad?
Why is
I think it would play
caring about the
poorly
counter
with
bad?
it. I think caring about the plus counter on Endure would play poorly.
Agree.
Well, I can certainly say that I would rather. I kind of dislike that both this and the black one are 3 mana 3/2s with Endure 1.
Mhm.
Or one's Endure 1, the other one's Endure 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I first looked at the card, I actually really liked it, but hearing the two of you talk about it, and the more I think about it, I actually agree that I think if you're going to have a common that cares about enduring, I think that it should be a little bit worse in non-endure decks.
Mm-hmm.
Because as is, I will play this in any red deck. I really would. His costing is good and it's flexible when I pay it. And I think that if we're going to have a common, I'm just reiterating and agreeing with you that if you're going to have a common that cares about endure, it should be not a card that every red deck wants.
Mm-hmm. I think this could very reasonably be a 2/2.
Yes, that's what I was thinking as well. I think we've said everything that there is to say about this.
I'm good to move on.
Cool. Our next card is the Dune Crawler. It is 2 and a red for a 0/5 creature elemental. And it is fire breathing. For red, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. This is a fire breathing almost wall.
Everything about this is weird.
It's very strange.
The art, the stat line, the ability.
This implies that there exists some sort of heavily red, very slow deck. Right? A deck that is okay playing an 0/5 on turn 3 and then waiting until it has like 4 or 5 mountains to start hitting in with this. Right?
Right.
Or a mono red deck that curves out on turn 3. Like
that's its highest.
Not necessarily like curves out on turn 3, but the other deck that would play this is a deck that's going to go like turn 1 1-drop, turn 2 2 1-drops, turn 3 3-drop, turn 4 this plus a pump spell, turn 5 just for the rest of the game just pumping this.
Or it is your only mana sink for the rest of the game, which seems unlikely given that red has a mana sink.
Endure, yeah.
Right. And I'm just saying, like, I remember, I don't even remember what set it was, where there was Gidu fire breathing, and then nobody else would play the card, and so you had drafted really late in the draft, pick up 3 of them, and play mono red aggro. And if you want to enable that deck, I think that doing so is okay, but everything about this card seems confusing to me. The art doesn't work. I would much, if you're going to do this, I'd actually rather it was either a 1 mana 1/2 with an expensive fire breathing, or a higher mana cost, better stat line creature with fire breathing.
I just don't see why like fire breathing is even being prioritized. You know,
fire breathing is also
but I
like
just mean
sketchy at common.
It is certainly sketchy at common, and there is not. It's not like we have a red control deck or red ramp deck.
I think. Is there anything else we need to say?
Yeah. No.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next card. We have the Gudalim Sentinel, 2 and a red for a 2/3 creature Minotaur. It gets +2/+0 and has trample as long as you've cast a non-creature spell this turn. So we looked before at the one
remember
prowess creature, and we said, hey, maybe there's a second one, and there is, and it's a dang good one. What are our thoughts?
I don't know if this will rotate to the prowess deck either, but having 2 of them that will enable it, even if like not everyone.
You'll pick up a little bit of each. Yeah. I think this
cool
will
with it.
More so. Just a 3 mana 2/3 is not as good as a piker in a deck that's just looking to be mindlessly aggressive.
Right.
I think.
Well, in the current version of red, this is not the red 3-drop that I necessarily want. I want that 3/2 endure. In the current version, he is the best.
You're looking for.
Yes. Not that I wouldn't play him.
Well,
but,
that's a big part of just in the awkwardness of Dune Crawler.
Right, but I kind of imagine that the red-white deck is probably pretty likely to take the Sentinel here.
Oh, just
because the Sentinel, he probably has a number of token spells as well as
a vigilance granting aura that makes vigilant tokens. You'd be very happy to put it on this guy.
And I really only need to, in red-white, go wide. I only need to trigger him once for me to be happy, and if I can trigger him twice, I'm ecstatic. And so I agree that finding a way to maybe tone down his baseline so that the blue-red deck's more likely to get him would be kind of nice. Because
I mean, if there is 2 of these prowess payoffs, I don't think that's necessary.
Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. It is pushing the red likes.
That is less so, obviously, when we are dealing with the future where Burst Soup and Numad's a 2/2 and Dune Crawler is not changed. Like in that future, everyone just picks the Gudalim Sentinel.
Yes.
Right.
Which would be unfortunate. But then Dune Crawler's slot probably just wants to be some sort of generically good creature in that reality.
Like a 3/2.
I would also comment that the flavor of this guy doesn't necessarily work for me. Then you go ahead and say it. I've been talking a lot.
Oh, well, I think it's it's a Minotaur, which already doesn't really seem like prowessy. And I know this isn't technically prowess, like giving a Minotaur +2 and trample makes sense, but why would a Minotaur key off of a non-creature spell? Also, it's a Sentinel, which is like a Guardian. Guardians having trample is a little weird. And then the flavor text just doesn't have any relation to the rest, aside from the fact that it explains the Goodlin, but it doesn't have any relation to the abilities of the card.
I also want to add to that. I agree that those are completely my sentiments. I also want to add to the card that I really like this kind of rogue flavoring or like traitor flavoring that we had. And that if this could be, I don't know, like if I'm doing some kind of salt route, this is the guy who I bring with me who beats the crap out of someone trying to steal from me.
You know what I was thinking?
The enforcer, yeah.
What I was thinking could be really cool. This would make me really happy. Is if it was like the equivalent of like a trade or a train robber. It's like a caravan.
Oh yeah.
Robber.
Or maybe he's the train robber.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Just comes barreling in.
I think the art on this is also a little technological, or something like that. It just doesn't read like particularly ancient to me.
I agree.
In a weird way.
It's also because of the art style.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, let's move on.
Good to go?
One. Yep. The next card we have are common red equipment. It is Penance of Shemesh. It is 2 in a red for an artifact equipment. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. So it trumpet blasts. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Equip 2. Have we seen equipped creature gets +1/+1? Equip 2? Is that been on every single one of these?
I believe that's standard.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess
works.
that's a neat cycle.
I'm fine with it. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I was just surprised to see it.
Didn't the black one? We can scroll back up. And
The
check.
black one definitely did. I can't speak to the white or blue ones.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise there'd be no point in equipping it if it doesn't boost the creature you're equipping it to, right?
Oh, but what +1/+1 as opposed to anything else?
Yeah.
I believe
the numbers are all the same. I think
the black one definitely was.
The blue one is as well.
Yeah, the blue one is really good too. I love this cycle. I love what this cycle says about civilized. I love the feeling of it in this world. And this particular version of it, we came down on some of the other ones for like, well, so red doesn't have the issue of I'm trying to get civilized, and so the fact that I like when I play this is not as important to me as the black one, the blue one, or the white one. I'm willing to wait
on this one.
And a sorcery speed trumpet blast is like always kind of poopy, but then on the other hand, it's really well costed and then becomes an equipment for my creature. And so I kind of like that this split card does a bunch of things like not incredibly well, but does a whole bunch of things together in a way where I get to decide how and when I pay its mana costs and what installments. So I really like the card. This is a total home run for me.
Yeah, I agree. I really like the art. And I think that it kind of incentivizes me to read the flavor text, which is interesting.
I don't know what a pennant is.
It's like a banner.
Okay. Oh, okay. That explains a lot. That makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, it works. I think it's a little weird. Like my designer brain goes, this is weird, but then my player brain goes, this is pretty cool.
Ready to move?
I am definitely very ready to move. We have the Canvas Street Rioters. It is 3 in a red for a 3/2 creature human rogue. When they enter the battlefield, create a 1/1 red rogue creature token with haste. They are themselves a rogue. I don't know what that says about. I don't know what that says about the people living on Canvas Street.
Maybe they just want to be human.
These people are rogues. Huh. Never takes much to start a riot amongst the crooks, swindlers, and vagabonds of the Tamaraz empires. Okay, I'm okay with that. The flavor text justify it. We're seeing some really fun rogue flavor as well, like we keep talking about. So this is obviously pegged directly for the go wide deck, where we were saying like, hey, would you like 4/3 worth of stats? Yes, you would. Obviously, I think almost every red deck would be happy with that.
Definitely.
It's a little bit weird that it makes a 1/1 haste. And just what I mean by that is like,
When
what
are,
what
when
are
are
the
you
what are the
attacking with
chances?
that
What are the
token?
chances that on turn 4 I get to attack with my 1/1?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's also a little weird because you already have another 1/1 red token at common.
Which is?
The elementals.
Oh, yeah, that is weird.
Like I would kind of rather see him have haste and the token be an elemental.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Although that would be flavorfully really weird, but you can just reflavor it.
Yeah. And then the
Uh,
numbers, I mean, maybe even now, but then especially the numbers would need to be changed, I think.
Mm,
Because I think the 2-drop make 2 tokens spell is just like, it's picked by every red deck, pretty much.
sure.
And this kind of needs to be the, yes, are you going wide? Pick me, I will make your dreams come true card.
So like a 2/3 haste, do you think then?
I was thinking something more like that, yes.
Sounds reasonable to me.
I do really love the art. If this card does get reflavored, this is art that hopefully gets moved somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I
this
think
could,
the
this
art
could
is
be
usable.
the 2-mana sorcery.
I don't love it, but
It has a lot of
yeah,
personality. At the
it
very
does
least.
have personality. That's
That's
true.
important.
Ready?
Yep, I'm ready to move on. The next card we have is the Pouncing Pride Lord. It's 3 and a red for a 2/4 creature cat. It has haste, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. So haste and ETB target creature can't block this turn feel really good together. But a lot of the rest of this card kind of makes me feel weird. It's a red cat, and when do we see that? Like I maybe just, is Amonkhet just affecting me too much? Where we saw a lot of green and white cat.
I mean, Leonin have always been white, and I think that's where a lot of the connection comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I know there were ones like there were a number of cats like on Zendikar, for instance, that were white, wild cats. So I don't know exactly where the connection comes from, but I know that it's pretty deep.
We used to get cats in red. I mean, like, there are 2 that I can think. I have to Skyfall it. There is the Blood Rush one is a cat. The 3/3 who discard for +3/+3.
Oh, there's
And,
also Savannah Lions as just
um,
like an ancient white cat.
and Slash Panther was a red cat.
It was also like weird. That's not like a typical card. But whatever. So maybe Hasty Cat specifically feels particularly
Yeah,
red.
like a lion, if
2/4
any
cat.
cat, a lion or tiger definitely
Mhm.
seems appropriate in red.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's fine. But then we're moving into it's a 2/4. I think that's really weird. Both for the
Like
cat flavor
if we're
and
worrying
for the
about
rest of the
white,
effect.
about cats feeling white, then being a 2/4 is not a way to improve
help
that.
with that,
Nor is
yeah.
having the name Pride Lord.
No, certainly I mean, from looking at it, most of our red cats tend to be like saber tooths. They
Yeah,
tend to
like
be
tigers.
fast cats. Yeah, they're tiger cats. Because the lion is more of a regal cat. I don't see any lions in red. And also just the stat line, the 2/4 is kind of weird for me. I don't completely understand the intent behind it. Like
It
even if
honestly
this was
seems
something
just
else,
like
just
a
a 4-mana
placeholder.
2/4 red haste card.
You know? Yeah, it's very strange. Like if we're talking about making the Canvas Street Rioters into a 2/3, this very much seems like this is wanting to turn into a 3/2.
Into an aggressive feat, sure.
Yeah, 4-mana 3/2 haste.
Well, having a 2/3 haste and a 3/2 haste would be a bit weird.
The Rioters don't need to have haste.
You're right.
That was just
They
gravy.
don't.
Right?
Right. Yes.
Whereas
But
haste
then
is part of this design.
if they don't need to have haste, then that implies that you don't have anything with haste on the card, and that means they don't need to be a 2/3. But if this one would be more appropriate as a 2/3, I mean as a 3/2 rather.
Yeah.
So that would imply that one needs to be a 2/3.
I'm saying
Sure.
that sounds like the arrangement that makes the most sense to me.
I agree.
All right. Any more thoughts? For example, Cleo?
I'm good to move on.
Cool. Let's go. We have the Fearsome Impaler. That's a name.
Ooh.
3 red for a 5/4 creature orca nomad. It is Endure for 1 in a red, so we're seeing Endure on a 5-drop. One moment, please. I'm getting called in real life. Can you continue to talk about the card?
Sure, I'll do that. It has Endure 1 and a red. Whenever Fearsome Impaler endures, it gains first strike until end of turn. And it's an Orc Nomad. Zoo did say to continue talking about it, right?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Do you have any comments you want to say first?
Well, I like the art a lot. I'll
I
say
do
that.
like the art.
This card I actually think is like quite strong.
It's
very,
strong.
very strong. It's quite big in red. The first attack that it makes when you endure with it, it's almost impossible to block, and so that means that if they aren't killing it, your 5-drop is going to either be killing something or getting in for 6 damage, which is a lot in red. Like we've seen in green recently, we've been seeing these 5-mana 4/4s who attack as 6/6 tramplers 1 to 4 times, or twice, or require a condition for it. And I think that this is almost like on par with that. Because after you endure with him, he is a 6/5. I'm okay with that being in red. But as we've been saying, red's quite strong, and then on top of that, get quite a good 5-drop finisher.
Yeah.
That basically every red deck is going to get, because you don't want 3 of these, you want 1 or 2 of them.
Right.
And so I can have one, and like both, like we can be sitting next to each other in red and both get one of these.
Right.
I would like to see his endure stat line push. I'd like to see the endure cost pushed up to like 4.
You know what I think about this is the first strike really doesn't matter, because it has 4 toughness at base. And when you endure it, it's going to have 5 toughness. Why do you care about first strike at that point? What I really want to see on this is that having lower toughness,
well,
so that the first strike actually matters.
I mean, the first strike does matter in terms of getting through death touch blockers.
Well, that's
in
true.
terms of getting through green
really
cards
niche.
that you're trying to trade with.
It's
really niche,
but it's more niche than I think is desirable for this design.
Right.
It could certainly be a 5/3. This could certainly stand to be a 5/3. I think I like that. I think I like this as a 5/3.
To make it so that it's 4 toughness. Oh, but it's 6 for a strike. I think that's reasonable. Cool. It makes it feel even more red as well.
Exactly.
5 minute.
And we just took out a 5/3.
Did we?
In black.
Ah, that's true. There you go.
That is true.
It all works out. We're geniuses. All right. Are we good on that one? It's an Orc Nomad. Badass art.
Yeah. I don't know if the guy looks... I guess it does look like
it. Looks pretty Doharm art.
That's fair. Yeah,
keep
like
making comparisons.
cobbled together.
But it's cool.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. We have Splendid Conflagration. Splendid Conflict. Wow, that's a name. 3 red for an instant. It deals 5 damage to target creature. Add red. So you get a little bit of a rebate. It's kind of 3 mana, but also not. What do we think?
So adding red at instant speed is a little weird, because like you don't have that many instants that you can cast with red. And so a lot of the time, if you use it at instant speed, that red isn't going to matter. It's just going to be 5 mana, deal 5 damage to target creature, which is fine, but it feels bad a little bit.
Yeah, better to remove the option. Just say, hey, it's a sorcery. Plan around spending that mana at sorcery speed.
What have we even seen that can do that? Like could this untap? Could this untap 2 lands? Can red do that? Could it be deal 5 damage and tap 2 lands?
Not really.
Right.
So unlike, for instance, if it were a sorcery, you can use it to pay endure costs.
No, you can't.
I'm saying if it were not a source, as it is currently, you can use it to pay endure costs, which is kind of cool.
But that's so unintuitive and weird.
It definitely is. And the other thing would be Kindled Fury. You can use it for. I think the intent of this was actually endure costs, but that feels really weird. I don't like it so much either. I don't think being sorcery is actually the fix, though.
Yeah, I think maybe just this shouldn't exist.
Yeah, I'd like to see another design. I agree.
Cool. I love how that turned into, there's like a small problem here, to actually just get rid of it. Oh, that's funny.
I do like the card in theory, though.
Yes, like it's a cool design to be somewhere.
just not here.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Also, the art is not good. There's nothing.
I think it's
there's
good,
nothing
but just
splendid or
not for this.
conflagratory
Yeah.
about this art.
I think it's good, but not for the set, and not for
and
that
not for this
brightness.
card. Yeah, it needs some
Right.
editing as well. Yeah. All right, let's move on. We have our last card in red, and that also means the last card of today's review. It is the Wasteland Goliath. 4 red, red for a 6/5 creature giant. Whenever it becomes blocked by a creature with power 1 or less, sacrifice it at end of combat. It's top-down David versus Goliath, which is really, really, really cool. Other than that,
Yes.
it's just like a trash red
Right.
large creature.
I think you could even
which
make
is
it a
very
6/6
normal.
with that downside. It'd be fine.
You make it a 6/7.
I don't
Make it a
really love that.
7/5.
I mean, it's a pretty big downside.
Make it a
Like,
7/5.
You're saying my
A
6
7/5
drop
would be better.
my 6 drop trades with your 1 drop. Like that's pretty brutal.
It's hilarious.
It's great.
It's
but
so hilarious.
yes, it being a 7/5 or a 6/6 would be quite good.
And one thing that I do want to mention that's a little bit awkward is the fact that one of the 1-drops that it exists in the set is something that already will kill it,
Yeah,
which is the
typhoid.
rats.
But there's higher than 1-drops that will kill it as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
because,
There are creatures that are going to be having 1 power at 2, at 3, potentially as well.
and tokens.
Oh yeah, like the 1/1 soldiers. Oh, and the flavor there too. Oh, especially like a token killing this guy. You're nameless.
Mhm.
You're so unimportant, but you slay him anyways.
Nothing.
I love it.
God, that's
Good
really
stuff.
good. All right.
This is a flavor flag, as we call it.
All
Any
right.
other thoughts we have on this one?
That seems good.
Yeah, I love the flavor, of course. It's cool stuff. All right, so now that we have gone over that, we have seen all of Red's commons. We pointed out a little bit of awkwardness is at some of the curve slots. But looking back over it, do we see any other potential problems in where things are in terms of mana costs or support?
I think
for
overall it
archetypes and
looks
such?
good. Like maybe a little too much at 1, but we've removing smelt would already fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Or changing the smelt to another slot. So yeah, I think overall
Yeah,
good.
I mean the curve looks great in terms of a mix of everything from 1 to 6. You know, and like a lot at 2 and 3, which is very normal. That's very red. You
Well,
know?
so what cards do we have in here that are specifically for the spells archetype?
We
Spells
have the
archetype?
2.
There's
the
2 prowess creatures
and the
and
one
then
against trample.
spells. When you say specifically, you mean other decks won't pick them up so much? There's only the one.
Yeah, the other decks aren't going to pick up.
Well, we talked about that a little bit already.
Yes, we did.
There's
I don't
like
think we
there's like
needed to go back
tormented
over it.
voice. There's like tormented voice for that, right?
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I guess. There's
And
also
then-
just like the incidental upside of Ashes of Anku being a sorcery. That's not something you can build around.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
I
And-
agree.
And
Absolutely.
then our go wide deck, I believe we only have 2 token makers in red.
We
Is that
have
enough?
2
We have
token
Ashes of Anku
makers.
and we have the 4
2
drop.
is definitely enough for common.
And common and red is the big thing.
Yes,
Just the
common.
fact that
Right,
they don't
right.
have as many creature slots. I could theoretically see maybe one of these other spells making a 1/1 token, like conditionally, or maybe as a choice. Like you choose one
Like whatever
to make a
replaces
token or
active
something
treason
else.
or the 5-drop.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly I don't think that it's like desperately needed.
I'm just kind of talking it out, right? Now that we've looked
Yeah.
through everything.
No. Like,
and
yeah,
so
we're not
then-
saying you're wrong, Cleo. We're saying no.
Okay.
Thank
So
you
then
for
let's look
asking.
at for that archetype. The reason I'm talking about those ones is I feel like the the red
Black
green
green.
endure and
Mhm.
black red aggro look quite solid to me. It's the other 2
Yes.
archetypes that I'm not sold or fully supported. And I see myself, how would I get into them is, well, I start on removal spell that goes in both colors. So for this go wide archetype, what are my payoffs for going wide? Well, I have the equipment that pays off. Are other decks trying to pick that up? Maybe not as
Not
much,
really, no.
because there is no red civilized, right? There is. So
Yeah.
who else is taking penance of Shemesh? Well,
Only
Red,
RX
blue,
that has
maybe?
significant numbers of civilized.
would you not? I would take this in the blue red deck,
Yeah, exactly.
because curving, on turn 5, if I get to play and equip this, trigger my prowess
That's a pretty
creature,
big tempo
trigger my
swing.
minotaur,
I think it's just a generally fairly good card.
certainly, but there's other red cards that I'm more likely to
But
take
yeah,
in an endure
but red
deck.
green is not very interested in the penance. They have way better ways of spending their mana for what they're
Yeah.
trying to do.
I think I agree with that.
Okay.
In general, red seems pretty
Strong.
close, and
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
What were you gonna say?
I think that kind of covered it all.
Yeah.
Alright.
Cool stuff. So that was us covering black commons and red commons. I think that was really successful. Next time, what we're going to do is we're going to come back and cover green commons. Looks like there's no multicolored commons. We're going to cover the common lands and artifacts. And then, like I said before, we're also going to cover the the discoveries that we'll see at higher rarities. And that'll be the third stream. Do we have any just thoughts on the set overall from what we've seen in white, blue, black, and red? I continue to be very excited about it. For example,
I think it looks as good from the two colors that I saw as I hoped it had, but I haven't been keeping up with it well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. This set looks great. I like the world that is being built. I think that Endure as a mechanic both kind of captures that world, and it is quite strong. I think my primary critique after today, more so, I know that critiques can be hard, and I know that art is really difficult. The difference between the art that's working really well and the art that isn't working is pretty huge. And I think that I know that they can take a long time to find the right art, especially for the right card at the right mana cost. But it's such a great, portal into that world. And so finding a few places to kind of clean that up, especially when you talk about, especially like the Hearthstone, the 1-drop card, something that is so clearly like kind of paramount to what red is and what red is doing. Getting art on that is in line with some of the other great art in the set, I think would go a really long way for me.
righto.
Cool.
And with that, we will end the stream. Thank you very much for anyone who tuned in during or will be watching it afterwards in the YouTube VODs. We hope to see you in the future. Adios.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.